Chapter 391. Poplar Fruit had been fooling around with this group of immoral people for 2 days. Unknowingly, his moral integrity was almost gone. Fortunately, with Kiki watching over him, Poplar Fruit still held on to his last bit of bottom line. After his mood improved, Poplar Fruit also adjusted his mentality. Poplar Fruit now understood Fong Beibei's rejection. True love was not easy. It should be slow and steady. Impatience should not come. Moreover, he believed his own feelings. He also believed that Fong Beibei had feelings for him. It was just 2 months. Happiness was a matter of a lifetime. If he could not even wait for 2 months, how could he wait forever? There was one thing that made Poplar Fruit quite depressed. He had come 2 days early and had not been scheduled for his scenes. Instead, Kiki had succeeded in playing a small role. She was cute, innocent, and had a sweet mouth. Kiki had already become the happy fruit of the entire crew. When the filming started, she and her father sat at the side to watch the uncles and aunties' performances. When the filming came to an end, she ran in front of Xiao Gu with a smile and vividly reenacted Xiao Ji's performance just now. Everyone was very amused. Xiao Gu had an idea and asked the scriptwriters to think of a Red Boy joke at night. He forcibly added a scene for Kiki. Red Boy. Thus, Kiki began her first appearance on camera. Needless to say, Kiki's performance was still very eye-catching. Although Xiao Gu spent a lot of time explaining the scene to her, when it really started filming, she was very good in front of the camera. With one hand holding the metal ring, which was actually made of plastic, and the other hand on her waist, such a cute little person raised her nose and stared at the camera. She vividly displayed her fearless aura. Perhaps it was because Kiki was a child and might not be as patient as an adult, or perhaps it was because Kiki's acting was really good. Zimo, who was staring at the monitor, actually let Kiki pass with one sentence. Kiki indeed only had one scene. Xiao Gu and the others did not have the domineering attitude to casually push the little Kiki, who had never acted before, into an important supporting role. Kiki's sentence will be cut into 1 or 2 seconds of footage, forming a highlight with the other scenes of Wang Dachui being bullied by monsters. After filming, Poplar Fruit took a photo of Kiki in her Red Boy costume and posted it on Weibo with a smile. Kiki has made a cameo appearance in a short movie. Is everyone looking forward to it? In less than half a day, the photo of Kiki as the valiant Red Boy was forwarded by tens of thousands of people. It was so cute that Kiki's fans were almost melted by her cuteness. On the 3rd day, it was Poplar Fruit's turn to appear. After watching for so long, Poplar Fruit was a little itchy and could not wait to go on stage. His first scene was filmed in the village. It was the scene where Wang Dachui was deceived before he transmigrated. Now that the villages in the suburbs of Beijing were also very rich, the village roads had been turned into flat cement roads. Coupled with the walls of the houses, it looked similar to the hutongs in Beijing. There was no need for the film crew to return to Beijing to film the scenes. There would be an inner monologue of Wang Dachui, but it would be added in the post-production. Therefore, the camera started with Wang Dachui's dazed expression. At this moment, Wang Dachui was still wearing a formal suit. Although he still looked like a loser, at least he looked like a decent human being. However, when the camera moved to the basketball shoes on his feet, his poor background was exposed. At this time, Wang Dachui, a young man from the countryside who had just graduated, was struggling to find a job. As he walked, the great con man played by Poplar Fruit jumped out from the other side of the hutongs and grabbed Wang Dachui's hand. "Cut!" Zimo shouted and walked over helplessly. He said, "Poplar Fruit, this is not how you should act. Don't hold back your laughter. You have to act like a great con man who pretends to be serious but can be seen through at a glance." I'm sorry. Let's do it again. I'll correct it immediately." During this scene, Poplar Fruit had NGs several times. If it were not for the fact that the micromovie was not shot with a traditional film camera, God knows how much money Poplar Fruit had spent from the film crew. On the way to the interview, Wang Dachui's arm was suddenly grabbed by the great con man, played by Poplar Fruit. "What are you doing?" Wang Dachui asked exaggeratedly and fearfully. "Bro, do you want the film?" Poplar Fruit gave a wretched, You know what I mean expression. Cut. Zemo walked over again and said seriously, Poplar fruit, what's with your expression? Is this wretched? Come, Beast, make a wretched expression for him to see. After watching Beast's performance, Poplar fruit muttered in his heart, Of course I know how to be wretched, but I just can't grasp the extent of it. He was used to being serious, so it was very difficult for him to act wretchedly. If it were Song Ji-won, he wouldn't even need to act wretched. Poplar fruit failed several times again. This time, the whole crew was scratching their heads. They couldn't go on like this. Compared to the others, including Kiki, Poplar fruit's acting talent could be said to be at the bottom. Over the past few days, Chae and Jun, Baiku, Zemo, and a few other members of the crew who acted very well had taught Poplar fruit a lot of tips and tricks. However, just like how you can't live a good life even after listening to a lot of advice, Poplar fruit still found it difficult to show the expression of a great con man on his face. He could control almost every muscle in his body, but when it came to the combination of facial muscles, he was so clumsy that he couldn't even compare to a child. I've got it. Beast, who had been silent at the side, snapped his fingers and walked over. Poplar fruit, weren't your expressions not on point? I have an idea. Don't keep me in suspense. What's your idea? When he was the director, Zemo had a very bad temper. Perhaps this was a common problem among all directors. If your performance isn't on point, Poplar fruit, you'll be offside, Beast said jokingly. Offside? Poplar fruit was even more confused. Wasn't that a football term? That's a good idea. Zemo's eyes lit up, and he said with a smile, The offside that Beast mentioned is something he made up himself. What he means is that since you can't accurately express the emotions of the character, you can exaggerate a little. Seeing that Poplar fruit still did not quite understand, Zemo gestured to Poplar fruit and explained, For example, if I want to play a female role and I can't portray the gentleness of a woman, I might as well act more seductively and flirtatiously. Look. Zemo turned sideways and pulled up the sleeves of his t-shirt, revealing his thin shoulders. Then, with a flick of his slightly long hair, he threw a seductive wink and even blinked as if there was electricity in his eyes. For a man to show such flirtatious charm, he was just like a prostitute in a nightclub. Ha! Beast and Baiki hugged each other and laughed so hard that they almost fell to the ground. Beast shouted, Zemo, I've decided. In the next movie, I'll definitely let you play the female lead. Oh my god, this is too demonic. Chapter 392. Make it a little more exaggerated. Poplar fruit pondered as he pulled Baiku over to give it a try. Bro, do we need to perform divination on the film? Poplar fruit leaped up and hugged Baiku as though he had appeared out of thin air. He stuck his head out from behind Baiku's shoulder and made a very exaggerated and wretched look. His wretched look looked very fake, but Zemo and the others all clapped. All right, that's the effect we want. Unexpectedly, was not a movie in the traditional sense, nor was it an artistic microfilm. Its starting point was to be funny, and the funnier it was, the more the audience would like it. It did not matter if the expression was a little exaggerated. That was what made it funny. All right, director, I'm ready. Let's officially start filming. Poplar fruit said confidently. He also understood the requirements of Zemo and the others. Although he might not be able to act properly, Poplar fruit was still very confident that he could make it a little more exaggerated. After solving the problem with his acting, Poplar fruit's number of NGs started to decrease significantly. Baiku and the others would often forget their lines or mix up their lines, but Poplar fruit did not have any problems with that at all. Film? What film? Wang Dachui asked in a daze. According to the script, Baiku would have an inner monologue. Could it be one of those embarrassing films? How'd I get to encounter such a good thing? Tui, I'm sorry. The great hoodwinker smiled sheepishly and said, I misspoke. It's a problem with my previous profession. Then what exactly are you selling? Wang Dachui was getting a little impatient. Good stuff. It's definitely good stuff. The great hoodwinker took out a machine the size of a 7-inch tablet from somewhere and said mysteriously, the universal translation machine. Of all the languages in the world, there's nothing it can't translate except for those that you can't think of. Really? Wang Dachui said as though he was looking at a scammer. You're not lying to me, right? Why would I lie to you? The great hoodwinker said in all seriousness. But in reality, his inner monologue was, of course, you're obviously a fool with a lot of money. I'm definitely lying to you. Look, the great hoodwinker showed it to Wang Dachui. There's a logo here. You know about Xinda, right? We're a big translation company, and we produce products from Xinda. Everything is of the highest quality, and we don't cheat anyone. Just $998, just $998, and you can take it home immediately. He pressed a button, and Poplar Fruit and Baiku pretended to point at the void. The special effects here would be projected onto a screen, projecting another appearance of Poplar Fruit. Why is it still you? Wang Dachui said unhappily. You can change it. What type do you like? Princess? Mate? The great hoodwinker nudged Wang Dachui with his shoulder and said with a sly smile. Following that, the great hoodwinker started speaking in several languages. Mina saying, you're in a hurry. Ah, you're Seo. Sawadika. Bonjour. Namaste. The universal translation machine would provide a Chinese translation. It could also be reversed. When the great hoodwinker spoke Chinese, he could immediately translate it into the languages of other countries. It's that powerful? Wang Dachui drooled. He muttered to himself happily. With a divine weapon like this, it looks like it won't be long before I get promoted, get a raise, become the general manager, become the CEO, marry a rich and beautiful woman, and reach the pinnacle of my life. Just thinking about it makes me a little excited. It's that powerful and that cool. Just $998, just $998, and the factory will sell it directly. Once you miss this opportunity, you won't get this price anymore. The great hoodwinker continued to try his best to swindle him. 998? But I only have 1,000 yuan on me. Wang Dachui took out 10 bills from his pocket in a daze. Before he could finish, the great hoodwinker snatched the money from him and said with a chuckle, 1,000 yuan it is. Keep the change. What do you mean, keep the change? You're clearly the one who needs to give the change to them, all right? After that, he stuffed the machine into Wang Dachui's hands and disappeared in a flash. Wang Dachui wanted to cry, but had no tears to shed. He stood where he was and stretched out his right hand. Choking with sobs, he continued what he had not finished, saying, Give me a discount of 2 yuan. I want 2 yuan to take the subway. His voice was heart-wrenching and pitiful, and the incoherent mathematical algorithm was also a joke. After that, Wang Dachui stood dejectedly on the roof. The gloomy sunset shone on him as sad music played. Wang Dachui held the machine in his hands and suddenly realized it was just a tape recorder that looked like a tablet. Everything had been recorded beforehand. I've been cheated of all my money and failed the interview. How am I going to earn enough money to marry Xiaomei in the future? I might as well die. Sigh, but it's so high. I'm afraid of heights. I might as well go back, take a shower, and sleep. Wang Dachui did want to go back, but just as he turned around, he accidentally slipped and fell down the stairs. I don't want to die. Wang Dachui struggled as he fell. If you don't want to die, you won't die. The Buddhist voice came out of nowhere. Suddenly, a dazzling light burst out from the machine and covered the crying Wang Dachui. Then he disappeared. At this time, his classic monologue rang out. My name is Wang Dachui. I never thought I would find a job. The mysterious machine sent Wang Dachui to ancient times. On the way, he met the handsome Tang Sanzang, who was called the Beast. He learned that if he wanted to go back to the modern world, he had to obediently follow Tang Sanzang to seek scriptures. Then, they found the hot-tempered son Wukong, who was imprisoned under the Five Fingers Mountain, and the timid Zhu Beiji, who was seducing beauties at Gaolao village. The adorable Wang Dachui was finally reduced to the third junior brother. Then, they began a messy journey to the west. During this journey, not only were there classic plots like Womanland, but there were also scenes where they got lost in various countries. There were many new and interesting jokes in the script. Some were ridicule, and some were imitations. For example, in India, the film crew even made up a strange Indian dance. Although the people from those countries were all played by the film crew, when they spoke strange foreign languages, Poplar Fruit would dub the voices. Then, Wang Dachui would take out the machine that had turned into a wooden board. What was amazing was that the machine could operate on its own. Although it wouldn't show a screen, a special sound effect would appear every time it was turned on. Shinda translation. Shinda translation. The machine could translate the words of the other party into words and then translate them. What Wang Dachui didn't know was that the translation was actually done by a human. When the camera turned, they could see Poplar Fruit, who was hanging from a beam above his head, bitterly translating for them in another time and space. Poplar Fruit didn't have many scenes. Including the last video, he had only appeared for less than 2 minutes. However, in these 2 minutes, Poplar Fruit, who wasn't skilled enough, still had to NG many times. It took him a day and a half to finish filming. "You finished filming your scenes." The beast smiled at him. "Congratulations, congratulations." "Thank you," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "This is the first time in my life. Thank you for your tolerance. However, I still have work to do, right? I remember that you said you wanted to dub the voices." "Yes," the beast said with a smile. "But the dubbing can only be done after you've finished filming and edited into a film. So, for at least a week, you don't have anything to do here." Chapter 393. Poplar Fruit's scenes were done. Calling Beast meant that he was free to play and do whatever he wanted. The crew still needed to film for a few more days before they could finish shooting the entire micro-movie. Speaking of which, this speed was already very fast. It wasn't as troublesome as a regular movie. A micro-movie was only a few dozen minutes long. Moreover, Calling Beast movie relied on comedy as its selling point. The setting and props weren't that important. For example, the five-finger mountain that suppressed Sun Wukong was so crudely made that it made people's hair stand on end. It was a short mountain made of foam with black sand and stones stuck on the outside. Then a few random blades of grass were stuck on it, and a hole was dug out for Sun Wukong to stick his head out. Anyone could see the flaws in it. However, it was this crudely made five-finger mountain that became one of the jokes of the micro-movie. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but want to laugh every time he saw the five-finger mountain that was put aside after he finished using it. He even imitated Sun Wukong and stuck his head in it for Che and Juan to take a picture of him. It was a bit off-topic. However, Calling Beast's micro-movie took less than 3 weeks to shoot. It was very efficient. Even so, Poplar Fruit estimated that he would have to wait another 6 or 7 days. This was because after shooting, there would be editing and special effects. The dubbing would be recorded for the final video. Therefore, Calling Beast was worried that Poplar Fruit would be very busy as an executive, so he gave him a break. "No need." Poplar Fruit laughed. "I don't want to fly back to Yangcheng and then fly back a few days later. It's too troublesome. I don't know where to go in Beijing. It's summer vacation now, and Beijing is full of people. I might as well stay with you guys. If there's anything, I can help." Poplar Fruit stayed with the crew. Actually, it wasn't boring on the set. This group of people laughed all day and were very funny. Occasionally, they would come up with a joke that would make you hold your stomach and laugh for a long time. The only one who missed home was Kiki. Whenever night fell, she would always be by her father's side. She always felt that something strange and terrifying would jump out of this strange environment. Only holding her father's hand was the safest. However, at this time, the weakness in her heart would show itself. She would be talking about Jinzi for a while, then Bei for a while. She would even talk about Uncle Mosquito and her grandparents. It was as if a few days of not seeing each other felt like 3 years. "Let your Uncle Mosquito take care of the gold, so you don't have to worry. How about I ask Uncle Mosquito to take a video for you to see?" Poplar Fruit was always very considerate and comforting this daughter. Usually at this time, a gentle kiss from Poplar Fruit could make Kiki smile through tears. This trick worked every time. Poplar Fruit even suspected that the little guy was pretending to be pitiful to win his father's love. Something interesting happened in the film crew. During the lunch break, Che and Juan ran over and said, "Poplar Fruit, do me a favor." "What favor?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. "Let's have a spar and have a fight." Hanjuan chuckled and said, "Don't hold back. Have a real fight with me. Of course, don't use too much strength. Just defeat me." Poplar Fruit looked at him suspiciously and asked, "What do you want?" If Changyuan didn't know how good his kung fu was, then Poplar Fruit could still understand. But he knew. In the past, he had been beaten up by Poplar Fruit and had no strength to fight back. Now he wanted him to fight with him without holding back. Wasn't he looking for trouble? He had heard of begging for money and food, but he had never heard of anyone asking for a beating. Intuitively, Poplar Fruit knew that this guy was up to something. Seeing that Poplar Fruit was doubting him, Changyuan smiled and said, "It's like this. I told them that you were very good, but they didn't believe me. Since there's no proof, let's show them what you're made of and let them know how powerful you are." It's not just that, right? Poplar Fruit shook his head. He didn't believe that Changyuan would be so kind as to let him beat him up just to prove himself. Poplar Fruit didn't buy it, so Changyuan had to tell him everything. "Actually, they didn't believe me. Then I told them, 'You don't believe me, right? Then I'll fight with Poplar Fruit. If I win, you guys will treat me to a meal. If I lose, I'll treat you guys to a meal.' They still didn't believe me and insisted that I fight for real, not acting. Hey, what are you guys whispering about?" Baiku, who was sitting opposite them, laughed and shouted, "Don't collude. Collusion is invalid." Poplar Fruit smiled and shook his head. He said to Changyuan, "Forget it. It's such a boring thing, and you still want to trick your teammates?" He knew that Changyuan was very cunning. He must have acted to make others think that he was bluffing, so he swore to bet with him. "How is this cheating my teammates?" Changyuan shook his head and said, "It's obvious that they don't believe me." In order to get food and drink, Changyuan begged without any integrity, "Boss, I'll call you boss, okay? Help me." Poplar Fruit smiled and hooked Changyuan's head with one hand and pulled him to the open space in the middle of everyone. "Oh, there's also a genius from B-Box who improvised a song. Oh, let's go. Come, come, come. Place your bets. Accept your loss." Changyuan laughed and turned the happy atmosphere into a casino. "Bet your ass." Poplar Fruit laughed and scolded. Kiki was sleeping in a car, so Poplar Fruit could casually say some rude words. This gave a refreshing feeling in the northern crew. "How about this? I'll remake the rules. If I lose, I'll treat. If old Che loses, he'll treat everyone. What do you guys think?" Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "How can that be?" Changyuan's face turned green. A few people cheered, but there were still many people who calmly analyzed the problem. When they saw Poplar Fruit's fearless expression and Changyuan's confident expression, they began to mutter in their hearts, "Is Poplar Fruit really a master?" Behind them, under everyone's cheering, Changyuan looked at Poplar Fruit with hidden bitterness, waved his hand like a hoodlum, and said, "Okay, I'll treat you. Let's go. I admit defeat." However, he was still pushed back by everyone. Admitting defeat without a fight was unacceptable. Everyone's hearts were itching for a fight. The result was very clear. Even though Changyuan put in a lot of effort and threw out punches and kicks, even though Yanghua only used less than 30% of her strength and was purely teasing Changyuan still lost miserably. Yanghua used a very flashy Tai Chi kick that was similar to a scorpion's tail and kicked Changyuan to the ground. Everyone was really convinced. Although they weren't professionals and didn't know much about martial arts, they could see that Changyuan was in a difficult situation despite his efforts, and Poplar Fruit was still relaxed. Everyone could see that Changyuan was telling the truth. Poplar Fruit was really a master. Chapter 394. Poplar Fruit wanted to relax for 2 days, but he received a call from Zheng Yujia the day after he finished filming his scenes. Seeing that it was Zheng Yujia calling, Poplar Fruit felt a little guilty. He had been in Beijing for so long, but he hadn't told Zheng Yujia about it. Let's not think about it in the wrong way. From the perspective of pure friendship, Poplar Fruit was not being a good friend. "Hello, aha." Poplar Fruit laughed dryly and asked, "Why did you suddenly call me? Long time no see." "I've been so busy recently," Zheng Yujia said angrily on the other side of the phone. "It's not like you don't know that I've been working overtime for half a month, Because of that stupid book that you're reading. You didn't even call me. So why are you still talking about it? Ahaha. Poplar Fruit scratched his head, not knowing how to answer. He didn't know what Zheng Yujie had been busy with recently. Ever since she brought back Poplar Fruit's translation manuscript, the young school had been preparing to launch into the market. Generally speaking, the publishing of a book was not a simple matter. Let's not talk about the previous steps. After Yanghua translated the manuscript, she still had to go through the process of reviewing the manuscript, declaring the book number, confirming the print run, pricing, typesetting, printing, etc. After the current market, if a publishing house wanted a book to sell well, there would be a series of complicated distribution and marketing activities, such as organizing the author to hold lectures at retail bookstores, signing books, and other new book promotion activities, organizing book critics to publish book reviews, and so on. Every process dragged on for a few days, and in the end, it would take a long time for the book to be successfully published. Not every book could be on the fast track like Leader Qiao's autobiography, and it had green lights all the way. Zheng Yujie listed The Young School as one of Dongxin's most important books of the year, which meant that there would be a lot of marketing activities to do. So, Zheng Yujie had been busy with such things. Every time she thought about how Yanghua threw the books to her like a shopkeeper and went off to do whatever he wanted, Zheng Yujie's heart was filled with resentment. She was so busy that she didn't even get a call from him to comfort her. However, Zheng Yujie wasn't complaining to him. She ignored Poplar Fruit's dry laugh and went straight to the point. Tell me, are you hiding something from me? Hiding what from you? Poplar Fruit's heart was about to jump out of his chest. What else are you hiding from me? Did you secretly come to the capital without telling me? Zheng Yujie asked angrily. The thing that Yanghua was most worried about had happened. He stammered for a while, then laughed dryly and asked, Didn't I tell you? I thought I told you. Zheng Yujie was silent for a while and said uncomfortably, You lied to me. You didn't want to tell me at all. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Poplar Fruit suddenly panicked. He had to use dozens of lies to cover up his lie. Poplar Fruit didn't have the talent for lying, so he could only obediently admit his mistake. Don't be angry. I secretly came here. That I also have my difficulties. What difficulties? With Zheng Yujie's shrewish personality, she was also aggressive when she spoke. She quickly followed up with another question. It's a long story. Let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you. Poplar Fruit wanted to change the topic. How did you find out that I was in Beijing? That's right. How did Zheng Yujie find out? This was the question that Poplar Fruit couldn't figure out. If Poplar Fruit didn't know that Zheng Yujie's character was impetuous and straightforward, he might have thought that Zheng Yujie sent someone to spy on him. Look at your Weibo. Zheng Yujie snorted and said. Weibo? Poplar Fruit was on the phone, so he couldn't open Weibo to look. However, his memory was pretty good. Soon, he recalled the scene of him browsing Weibo not long ago. I'm going to faint. Poplar Fruit secretly patted his head. He forgot that when he used his phone to post on Weibo, the app would show the location by default. Then, 2 days ago, Poplar Fruit posted a picture of Kiki dressed up as Red Boy. Although the location shown was a little off, it completely sold out the fact that he was in Beijing. No wonder Zheng Yujie found out. So it's Weibo. Yujie, you really read it carefully. Poplar Fruit wanted to use laughter to adjust the atmosphere. How am I reading it carefully? Zheng Yujie muttered. I didn't notice before. You haven't posted on Weibo for the past few days. I was bored and had to look through your previous Weibo to see it. Counting the time when you posted on Weibo, you should have been in Beijing for 3 or 4 days, right? Zheng Yujie questioned. You've been here for so long and haven't said a word. You don't want to talk to me anymore? No way. Poplar Fruit refused to admit it. He said, I was thinking of looking for you in a few days when I'm free. You're not free now, and I'm also busy shooting the micro movie. I don't have time. Poplar Fruit could swear to God that this was not a lie. He really did think that in a few days, when the matters in Beijing were settled, he would look for Zheng Yujie for a meal before he went home. Wouldn't it be great if he could find an excuse to get over it? What micro movie? Zheng Yujie asked. It even made Kiki look like this. However, she did not wait for Poplar Fruit to reply and said, It doesn't need a few days. I happen to be free today. I'll be there soon. We'll talk later. Soon? Poplar Fruit jumped up. You're here? Yeah, I drove here. I just got off the highway in Beijing, Zheng Yujie replied casually. Where are you coming from? Poplar Fruit was not calm. On one hand, he was very nervous about Zheng Yujie's arrival. On the other hand, he was a little worried for Zheng Yujie. It was almost 4:30 in the afternoon. In another hour or two, the sky would be dark. Would it be safe for her to come over at this time? It's XXX in the suburbs. Zheng Yujie gave him an address and said leisurely, Isn't it shown on your Weibo? I have the GPS here. Don't worry. If you don't worry, you're going to run into some mountain ditch. Poplar Fruit complained his heart. He quickly said to Zheng Yujie, It's not there. Wait a minute. I'll call you later. After Poplar Fruit hung up the phone, he quickly checked the map on his phone. He glanced at it and then called Zheng Yujie. The location on Weibo is fake. The one on Weibo is more than 10 kilometers away from us. Then how do we get there? Zheng Yujie asked. Use the GPS to see if there's Xinghong Soup Village, Poplar Fruit instructed. Yes. Zheng Yujie stopped the car on the side of the road and answered after fiddling with it for a while. Then drive over. I'll borrow a car to pick you up at the entrance of the village, Poplar Fruit said. Poplar Fruit called a beast to pick up the crew's minivan and drove to the entrance of the village. After waiting for a long time, the crew had already come down from the mountain. Zheng Yujie took a lot of detours. When she arrived, it was already dark. Chapter 395. When Poplar Fruit drove the car into the courtyard with Zheng Yujie, the few clowns who lived in Poplar Fruit's courtyard called out loudly, What are you yelling for? Poplar Fruit ran up and pinched the chubby face of Calling Beast. After spending time together for a few days, he had become more familiar with Calling Beast, ZMO, Baiku, and the others. He could even join in and play with them. Nice car, beautiful girl. Baika put on his classic sluggish face with a wretched smirk and pushed Poplar Fruit. It was indeed a nice car. Zheng Yujie had changed to a BMW X6 that could run a little faster. Although it was not as expensive as the previous Maserati, Zheng Yujie's X6 could almost buy two of Poplar Fruit's Land Rovers. Moreover, the white BMW X6 appearance was much softer than Poplar Fruit's Land Rovers. It looked good and generous. Beauty, Zheng Yujie was definitely worthy of the title. Although Zheng Yujie's iconic short hair reduced her looks a lot, her natural beauty was still incomparable to other girls. She had arched eyebrows and almond-shaped eyes. She was beautiful but not charming. She also had the elegance of a lady from a wealthy family. All of a sudden, the begonia flowers planted in the courtyard paled in comparison. Hello, everyone. After getting out of the car, Zheng Yujie did not feel shy at all. Instead, she smiled and greeted Calling Beast and the others. Sorry for the delay on the road. I've kept everyone waiting. Annie, Kiki, who was in Poplar Fruit's arms, could not hold back anymore. She cheered and greeted Zheng Yujie. Although Zheng Yujie and Fang Beibei did not spend a lot of time together, Zheng Yujie often bought delicious and fun things for Kiki, especially the electronic keyboard Zheng Yujie bought for Kiki on her birthday. When Kiki was at home, she often asked her father to take it out to play. Seeing Zheng Yujie, she would receive a gift. Of course, Kiki was happy. Poplar Fruit, come and help me move the things. Zheng Yujie called out. What did you buy this time? Poplar Fruit complained about Zheng Yujie's extravagance. Nothing. Zheng Yujie smiled and said, I guess that you went to the suburbs to film. The conditions are tough and there's nothing delicious, so I packed 5 roast ducks from the cheap shop. What did I hear? Roast ducks? Lao Kong from the special effects team, who had sharp ears, had just come in through the door when he heard the fragrance. He trotted over while salivating. Lao Shou could not wait anymore. He squeezed over from behind Baiku and said, Roast ducks? And the cheap ones? They're old brands. Do you get a share? Hee hee. Of course. Zheng Yujie smiled and said, I bought them for everyone. But before I came here, I didn't know how many people you have, so I only bought 5. Put them in the thermal pot they gave you. They should still be hot. If they're not hot, I'll ask Poplar Fruit to cook them for you. Not a small number. Not a small number. Lao Shou smiled and said, "Those guys finished their meal as soon as they came back. Later, each courtyard will send 1.5 roast ducks to them as supper. We will take care of the remaining 2. Look at how nice we are. We will wait for Poplar Fruit to come back and eat together. Good people will be rewarded." TSK, you call yourself a good person. Who was the one who said that Poplar Fruit would cook a big meal tonight and would rather die than eat box lunches? Zhang Binyu mercilessly exposed Lao Shou's lie. That's not wrong at all. Follow Poplar Fruit, and there will be delicious food every day, Lao Shou said shamelessly. Phew. Everyone expressed their strong disdain for Lao Shou's flattery. However, Zhang Yujia's arrival did bring a lot of fresh air to the crew. Zhang Yujia was far better at socializing than Poplar Fruit. With just a few words, she made Lao Shou and the others feel closer to her. Furthermore, she was generous and gave 5 Beijing roast ducks as a gift. The foodies in the crew who fell under the skirt of delicious food all treated Zhang Yujia as a female bodhisattva. As for Poplar Fruit, although he also made a lot of delicious food and shared it with everyone, Zhang Yujia was still a beauty. Unfortunately, the gap between Poplar Fruit and Zhang Yujia had widened. The only person who had reservations about Zhang Yujia's appearance was the silent Che Enjuan. Don't forget, Che Enjuan had secretly taken photos of Poplar Fruit for a period of time. He knew that Poplar Fruit had 2 devastatingly beautiful women by his side in Yangcheng. Either one of those 2 would be the most dazzling existence in a crowd, but they were very close to Poplar Fruit. They were so close that Che Enjuan felt that there was a story behind it. Although he often used the wrong angle to take some ambiguous photos to achieve the desired effect to the client, he didn't think that the 2 beauties in Yangguo were like his other clients who looked ambiguous but were actually very pure. There must be something going on between Poplar Fruit and them. That was what Che Enjuan thought from the bottom of his heart. However, he still felt that he guessed correctly. Now, there was another one, and it was a very rich beauty. Her temperament was extraordinary. At the very least, she was a rich second generation. Thinking about a special big city like Beijing, she might even be some rich second generation. Che Enjuan didn't dare to think about it anymore. This beauty seemed to have a very deep relationship with Poplar Fruit. Che Enjuan could tell that although Poplar Fruit still looked serious, the way the beauty looked at Poplar Fruit was not serious at all. Che Enjuan knew that he wasn't a moralist who flaunted morality, but Poplar Fruit's treatment was really enviable. A person should be like Boss Yang, leading the left and supporting the right, spurring the horse with the whip, and shooting the eagle with the bow. Che Enjuan sighed with envy in his heart. After everyone had eaten their fill, Zhang Yujia asked curiously, "I heard from Poplar Fruit that you guys are shooting a micro-movie. What is it about?" "Haha, it's about a poor Jiao who transmigrates back to Journey to the West and has a funny journey," Bai Ku explained. "How can it be as boring as you say?" Bai Ku said disdainfully. "If you were to write an advertisement, we would all be poor. It's like this. We are shooting a super Jiao called Wang Dachui, who is our Bai Ku. He was deceived and transmigrated back to the past. Then, he followed Tang Sanzang and his disciples to the west. Along the way, he encountered a lot of strange things, such as the setting of the story involves humor, transmigration, workplace, and other current hot elements. The plot and content are all-inclusive. From current hot topics to classic historical stories, we will incorporate them all. So that's how it is." Zhang Yujia nodded as if she understood. A story told by mouth would definitely not be as good as a video. Vaika still tried his best to get Zhang Yujia to approve of his work. "Our micro-movie will be very fast-paced. It won't be as slow as a normal micro-movie. It will basically imitate the brisk style of Japanese manga." Oh, for Zhang Yujia, who was slightly older, she couldn't really understand Baiku's meaning. She nodded and felt a little perfunctory. Chapter 396. Seeing Zhang Yujia's lack of interest, Poplar Fruit helped to explain. Poplar Fruit was indeed someone who relied on words to make a living. He was very good at telling stories. He picked a few interesting lines and quickly ignited Zhang Yujia's interest. "Ha ha!" Zhang Yujia laughed loudly without caring about her image. She asked, what happened next? Did Yaosho resist Old Kong's temptation? Old Kong played the role of the queen of Womanland. He was worlds apart from the other beautiful maids in Womanland, played by Xiao Gu and the others. This would bring a strong impact of laughter to the audience. Poplar Fruit smiled and shrugged. He said, I can't reveal too much. When the film is out, you could take a look. Otherwise, what's to see if there are spoilers? So mysterious. Zheng Yujie curled her lips and didn't continue to ask. Zheng Yujie was most interested in the industry that Yaosho was in. After all, publishing was almost the same as the media industry. However, Yaosho's industry was different from the media industry. Using the term Zheng Yujie gave, it was called new media. In this aspect, Yaosho and the others from Wanhe were chatting happily with Zheng Yujie. It was as if they had found a soulmate. Poplar Fruit had heard of this term before, but he didn't know much about it. He interjected, what is new media? New media is the media form that appears under the support of new technology. For example, digital magazines, digital newspapers, digital radio, mobile text messages, the internet, desktop windows, digital TV, digital movies, touch media, etc. Baike raised his hand and said, oh, but Baike, why does your explanation sound a bit like the explanation in the internet? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. No way. Baike laughed dryly and hid his phone under the table. I think this explanation is more difficult to understand. Zheng Yujie smiled. In layman's terms, they are different from traditional print media, such as newspapers, magazines, radio, and television. They may be an evolution of traditional media, but they rely on new technologies, such as network technology and mobile technology, to create and provide content for users. That's right. We mainly deal with online videos. Calling Beast laughed. We might not be able to appear on TV, and the cinemas might not arrange a schedule for our movies, at least not now. However, we can gain more viewers online than on TV and movies, so we can be considered a new media film company. Amazing. Poplar Fruit gave him a thumbs up and said, although I'm new to this term, our company chose to invest in your advertising because of your popularity and creativity. Creativity is the core value of new media. Zheng Yujie laughed. When I was in the United States, I did some research on new media. It's not that I'm a fan of foreign countries, but the new media in the United States is developing much faster than in China. Many of the teams on their video websites operate as commercial companies. What's the role of new media? First, it satisfies people's needs for fragmentation of leisure and entertainment time. It's all because of the faster pace of life, so I won't go into details. Zheng Yujie smiled mischievously and continued. Then, it satisfies people's needs for interactive expression, entertainment, and information anytime and anywhere. For example, in China, I saw the creation of bullet screen video websites. It's more focused on this demand. Poplar Fruit listened and nodded. Calling Beast and the others also agreed. Just now, I said that creativity is important because people are more active in their choice of media and content. This requires the video to have originality and individuality. If it's not very creative, if it's posted online, people will immediately click and close it when they see the same or imitated parts, Zheng Yujie said. Then, won't the new media industry be very risky? Poplar Fruit asked. How do we know that our work won't suit everyone's taste? Moreover, it's hard to satisfy everyone. Isn't this too difficult? The risk is very high. Calling Beast had started his business for 2 years. He was deeply moved. There are many people who make videos and content in our country, but too many of them are fighting alone. Calling Beast was the same. Before he started his business, he made videos online for 5 years, and he was fighting alone almost all the time. Let's not talk about the great waves washing away the sand. Many people who made videos in YouTube back then are still persevering. Of course, there are also more fresh blood pouring in. This industry is still very prosperous. Calling Beast was sad for a while and then laughed. There aren't many companies and cultures like us. Calling Beast said with certainty. It's okay. I don't know about others, but one he will definitely become stronger and stronger. Poplar Fruit smiled and comforted Calling Beast. You have such an excellent team. Everyone can write, act, and direct. They're all talented. Take our old Kong, for example. He can do special effects and act as a beauty. Hey, Poplar Fruit, I'm unjustly implicated. Old Kong laughed. When he wasn't acting, he was still very manly. Even his voice was very rough. That's also thanks to Cinda's trust in us. If not for this 1 million advertising investment, we wouldn't even have enough to eat. How would we have the money to film unexpectedly? Calling Beast laughed. His words were half true and half false. It was suspected that he was bootlicking. However, it was true that this 1 million was indeed a huge investment for Wan He at this stage. Didn't you cooperate with you to this time? Poplar Fruit laughed. Once you become famous, you won't have to worry about not having investments in the future. I still have a lot of confidence in you. How about I invest in you? Zheng Yujia gently put down the cup in her hand and suddenly threw out a heavy bomb. Everyone looked at Zheng Yujia. Oh, what? Zheng Yujia said casually. Didn't you say that you lack funds? I can invest in you. What nonsense are you talking about? Investment is not child's play. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but tug at her. Didn't you say that when he has a lot of prospects? Zheng Yujia looked at Poplar Fruit seriously. She didn't seem to be joking. I believe in your vision. If Calling Beast agrees, I can invest in you. You really want to invest? Calling Beast was a little anxious. How much do you want to invest? Although Cinda's 1 million and U2's strategic investment temporarily solved Wan He's urgent needs, they still didn't have much money left in their account. This seriously shackled Wan He's development speed. Too many good projects could only exist in the plan. 10 million. Zheng Yujia smiled and said, how many shares of Wan He could be exchanged for? Chapter 397. Everything happened too suddenly. It was like a roller coaster. The scenery changed too quickly, and no one could react in time. If Poplar Fruit was Wang Dachui, he would really want to shout, never would I have thought that. Zheng Yujia came to look for Poplar Fruit. After dinner, she was moved by Poplar Fruit's description and decided to invest in the beast. 10 million. Wan He's assets, both tangible and intangible, did not even add up to 20 million. 10 million was enough to buy 50% of Wan He's shares. Of course, the beast and Wan He's other two founders would definitely not let Zheng Yujia buy 50% of the shares. The Wan He now was not the Wan He who would become a leader in the industry in the future. A few months ago, Wan He took on a very large production project. As the team was still in the run-in period and overloaded with work, the entire team was on the verge of collapse. The problems of the team, goals, and customer service were all infinitely magnified. This was a difficult hurdle to cross. Fortunately, the appearance of Shinda gave them hope again. Even so, the other two founders of Wan He were still unwilling to sell their shares. After all, this was a business that belonged to them. However, as long as there was enough temptation, one's attitude could change. Zheng Yujia did not force the sale. She only revealed her background a little, and Wan He started to waver. The power of Zheng Yujia's family was mainly concentrated in two areas. On one hand, it was concentrated in the local government where Zheng Yujia's father, Zheng Mingsheng, was currently working. This was the world that Zheng Mingsheng had spent more than 20 years to conquer. In that province, it could be said that the Zheng family connections were deeply rooted and flourishing. On the other hand, there was the General Administration of Press, which was in charge of all the major media outlets. Although that department was not considered a core department, it was in charge of the country's mouthpiece and entertainment industry. With a stomp of its foot, the entire country would know. The General Administration of Press was old Master Zhang's territory before he retired. Although they were estranged now, the Zheng family still had relatives who held important positions in it. The reason why Zheng Yujia could become a deputy editor at a big publishing house at such a young age could be said to have a lot to do with the Zheng family's influence in the General Administration of Press. No matter how much the new media ignored the traditional media's communication methods, they could not avoid this great god. There had long been rumors in Beijing that the General Administration of News was going to strengthen the management of online videos, especially the main video websites. Whether this rumor was true or false, anyone with a discerning eye would know that the country's management of video websites was something that would happen sooner or later. For example, many videos were playing around the edges. If they accidentally offended the General Administration of News, not only would the team have to leave, the video website behind them would also not be able to escape. Therefore, knowing that Zheng Yujie had connections in this aspect, Wang Yi's heart began to move, not to mention whether or not he would have any dealings with the General Administration of News in the future. If he were to build a good relationship with them now, opportunities would definitely come rolling in. What's more, Wang Yi was now making videos on the internet. Would he not step into the real film industry in the future? Every media person had the dream of putting their work on the big screen. Because of this, that night, after a discussion with the other two founders, they reluctantly agreed to sell 15% of their shares. Anymore, and they would not be able to guarantee their control of the shares. If Zheng Yujie managed to convince one of them, she would be able to do whatever she wanted. Who would they cry to? Zheng Yujie did not have to buy Wang Yi. As for the proposal given by calling Beast, Zheng Yujie readily agreed to it. Of the 10 million she invested, 4 million was converted into 10% of Wang Yi's shares, and 6 million was used to invest in Wang Yi's other projects. The investment here was no longer purely advertising like Cinda. This money was to be invested in the projects, and they would share the profits like business partners. Even so, now it seemed that Zheng Yujie was still a loss. 4 million in exchange for 15% of the shares. Zheng Yujie did not mind. If it were someone else, they would probably have to find a few lawyers and negotiators to bargain for a few days. What else could they say? Everyone could only silently give her 32 likes in their hearts. Rich people can be capricious. Respect. Poplar Fruit wanted to persuade Zheng Yujie, and he did so secretly. However, seeing how determined she was, Poplar Fruit gave up. Forget it. She has money. Any car is worth so much. Even if she loses it, it won't hurt. Poplar Fruit comforted himself like this. However, was that really the case? That night, Zheng Yujie moved into Poplar Fruit's room under everyone's ambiguous gazes. Of course, they slept separately. There were originally 2 beds in the room. What? Not long after, Poplar Fruit suddenly exclaimed in the room. Poplar Fruit exclaimed because Zheng Yujie suddenly announced that Poplar Fruit also had a share in the 10 million investment. The news came too suddenly. Zheng Yujie acted first and reported later. She promised to invest 10 million, but when she returned to the room, she casually informed Poplar Fruit, "Hey, you also want to invest 5 million. We will split the votes 50-50. Why are you shouting so loudly? Aren't you afraid of waking Kiki up?" Zheng Yujie asked discontentedly. "It's not like I want to eat you." Kiki was already asleep. Unlike at home, she went to bed at 9 o'clock. Now that she was playing outside, Kiki was tired faster. She went to bed early after eating at 8 o'clock. She did not take a shower. When Poplar Fruit carried her to bed, he used a warm wet towel to wipe her body. "Sister, didn't you want to invest by yourself? Why did you drag me in?" Poplar Fruit lowered his voice and asked sadly, "I don't have enough money." Zheng Yujie didn't even blink when she lied. She said matter-of-factly, "My money has been frozen by my mother. I only have 5 million yuan left in my private savings and salary savings, so I have to find some investments quickly. So you can help me pay for the remaining 5 million. If it was half a year ago, Zheng Yujie would definitely not ask for 5 million from Poplar Fruit. She knew that Poplar Fruit did not have much savings. However, when she was in Poplar Fruit's hometown, Poplar Fruit said that he earned money from selling games. She knew that Poplar Fruit was also a multi-millionaire. Zheng Yujie's words were half true and half false. Poplar Fruit still foolishly believed her. Zheng Yujie's card was indeed frozen by her mother. However, she was not as miserable as she made herself out to be. She still had tens of millions left in her private savings. Even if she did not mention the money she had left, Zheng Yujie still had an aunt who loved her very much. She was a big boss with a net worth of billions. When she ran out of money, she could ask for as much as she wanted. Zheng Yujia's car was a gift from her aunt. Then why don't you invest for $1 million? You can still leave $1 million just in case. Why do you have to puff yourself up at your own cost? Poplar Fruit asked helplessly. Chapter 398. Big brother, if there's a chance to make money, I'll give you a share. Aren't you happy? Zheng Yujia stood barefoot on her bed and patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder condescendingly as she giggled. Zheng Yujia had money and could invest in Wanha Tianyi herself. However, she didn't want to invest in it herself. She wanted to pull Poplar Fruit in. The reason was very simple. She simply wanted to build a career with Poplar Fruit. After Poplar Fruit told her about how he made money from selling games, Zheng Yujia felt a sense of crisis. Actually, it could also be described as jealousy. She felt that she really didn't have many chances to interact with Poplar Fruit. Even her love rival, Fong Bei, could design games with Poplar Fruit and make money. Although she didn't put Poplar Fruit's 18 million in her eyes, the sweet expression on Poplar Fruit's face when he told her the story strongly stimulated Zheng Yujia. No matter what, she had to pull Poplar Fruit into her career. Only then would Poplar Fruit look at her in a higher light. Zheng Yujia thought so. Translating books was only a job requirement. She put in a lot of effort to make money for the publishing house. Therefore, Zheng Yujia felt that this wasn't a career. Now, there was an opportunity. Poplar Fruit was optimistic about Wanha Tianyi, and this industry was also optimistic about Zheng Yujia. If the two of them invested together, Zheng Yujia felt that it was a very happy thing. Regardless of success or failure, the two of them were walking hand in hand on this road. How can you tell that it's profitable? Poplar Fruit asked helplessly. Profitability in the video industry has always been a big problem. Didn't you say that you were optimistic about Wanha Tianyi's model when you introduced it? Zheng Yujia used Poplar Fruit's words to refute Poplar Fruit. Don't worry, I'm not that stupid to invest in people casually. That's a nouveau riche. Zheng Yujia patiently explained to Poplar Fruit. I've seriously considered it. First, because we have a very creative team, we can provide the audience with the content they want to watch. Second, we can target customers for advertisers through content positioning. Third, the scarcity of high-quality content resources has always been the focus of video websites. We can cooperate with the platform to provide exclusive high-quality content for the platform. Finally, as the content operator, we can continue to develop. Isn't this profitable? But Yanghua was very conflicted as she stammered. Poplar Fruit was now very depressed. These were the words he said when he praised Wanha. Now that Zheng Yujia had gathered all the fragmented points and returned them to him, Poplar Fruit didn't know how to refute. It wasn't that he wasn't optimistic about the investment in Wanha. Perhaps in a few years, this investment could really make a lot of profit, but Poplar Fruit really didn't want to spend money at this juncture. $5 million was a lot, but it wasn't a lot either. Poplar Fruit had $3 million, which was more than 18 million RMB. If this money wasn't earned by him and Fong Bei, Poplar Fruit would definitely take out $5 million without batting an eyelid. However, Poplar Fruit had promised Fong Bei to use the money earned by the two of them and try to do as much good as possible. Now that he was investing with Zheng Yujia, if he lost all of it, how would he explain it to Fong Bei in the future? Taking a step back, if Fong Bei found out that he came to Beijing with Zheng Yujia and invested money in Zheng Yujia, wouldn't it be another misunderstanding? Yeah, Poplar Fruit actually thought of this. He felt that his EQ seemed to have improved a lot. However, Zheng Yujia was unhappy. She said discontentedly, "Why are you so hesitant? Are you so conflicted? You are a millionaire. It's only 5 million. Do you still need to think about it?" No, Poplar Fruit sighed, but he found that what Zheng Yujia said was really reasonable. He was speechless. "Are you that afraid that I will cheat you of your money?" Zheng Yujia felt that she needed to look up at Poplar Fruit while standing. It was a bit strenuous, so she half knelt down. The beds in the north were higher. Like this, the two of them were on the same level. Poplar Fruit shook his head. "How about this? Let's just say that you borrowed it from me, okay?" Zheng Yujia waved her hand and said, "If you earn it, it's on you. If you lose it, it's on me." Poplar Fruit looked into her eyes. Under the illumination of the incandescent lamp, that pair of beautiful eyes was very bright, without a trace of impurity. Through such a pair of eyes, Poplar Fruit could feel her sincerity and desire. His heart softened. Poplar Fruit let go of his obsession. He secretly sighed and said, "No, I will invest too. That's how it should be." Zheng Yujie smiled and patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder. She said, "Be more straightforward. Look, sister has fought for such a good opportunity for you. In a flash, you're also a big boss. Compared to you being a dispensable vice president in Shinda, it's much better." "Who said I'm dispensable? I'm very important. Okay?" Yangguo looked at her helplessly, not knowing what to say. In this regard, Zheng Yujie's understanding of Poplar Fruit was indeed wrong. Since childhood, Zheng Yujie was used to seeing her superior father and her aunt who controlled the fate of hundreds of thousands of people. Perhaps because of her habitual thinking, she felt that Poplar Fruit had the same desire. But Poplar Fruit did not. Poplar Fruit was just an ordinary person who was obsessed with academics and a plain life. However, this was not important. Poplar Fruit did not care about Zheng Yujie's big words. Anyway, he had already decided to invest. Just treat it as investing a little money to support the team he was optimistic about, to support Qianshou and the others who were now considered good friends. Of course, he was also doing Zheng Yujie a favor, so that she would not be thought of as a liar who gave empty promises. "Aren't you going to sleep?" Zheng Yujie got into bed, stretched out her pretty head, and looked at Poplar Fruit, who took out his laptop and put it on the table. "You go to sleep first. I'll write something." Poplar Fruit smiled at Zheng Yujie. It was only 10 o'clock. Unlike Zheng Yujie, who needed to sleep for beauty, Poplar Fruit was not sleepy at all. Usually, he climbed into bed at 1 or 2 o'clock. "Are you still translating?" Zheng Yujie yawned. She did not rest today and rushed over. She was sleepy. "Why don't you give yourself a break? You have so much money. Why do you still need to do so much translation?" "It's not translation." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "It's to write a summary of my own translation experience. Didn't you say that I was a dispensable vice president? Well, aren't I working now?" In the past 6 months, he had learned so much linguistic knowledge and compared it with his own translation work. Poplar Fruit himself also had some new ideas. He was going to record it and use it as a teaching material for the Shinda translation training class in the future. Poplar Fruit felt that it might be of great help to translators who had already entered the industry. "Oh, so boring. I don't care about you anymore. I'm going to sleep," Zheng Yujie muttered. Chapter 399. When she woke up the next day, Zheng Yujie looked at the empty room and the quilt that had been kicked aside because of the hot weather. Although she already knew that this would be the result, she couldn't help but ridicule Poplar Fruit. He was worse than a beast. Living in the same room with a beautiful woman and looking at her curvy body without being moved, other than Liu Xiaohui, probably only Poplar Fruit could do this. When she came out, Zheng Yujie saw that the yard was already busy. The crew members were counting things and loading them into the car. They were ready to go up the mountain to continue working. "Didn't you finish filming? Do you still want to go?" Zheng Yujie took a freshly steamed bun and gnawed on it. She walked to Poplar Fruit's side and asked, "Good morning, Auntie." Kiki greeted politely, but her face was still covered with porridge and rice grains. Poplar Fruit was chasing after her to wipe them off. "Good morning, Kiki." Zheng Yujie responded with a smile and glared at Poplar Fruit. This guy was worse than a child. He only cared about taking care of the child and ignored her. "Go ahead. I have nothing to do." Poplar Fruit smiled. "I have something to do." "Who said that I have nothing to do?" Zheng Yujie retorted. "I came to find you." "Of course, I have something to do." "What is it?" Poplar Fruit asked curiously. "Your book." Zheng Yujie explained to Poplar Fruit. It turned out that Zheng Yujie didn't come just to see Poplar Fruit. Of course, this was the main reason. Otherwise, she could have just called. In order to get the best results, Zheng Yujie contacted Lian, who was abroad, when she was preparing for the marketing campaign for the young school. At this time, Lian had finished filming the film. As long as the special effects were done in a few months, it could be pushed to the major cinemas all over the world. Zheng Yujie looked for him in the hope of getting some first-hand information about Li Yun, such as screenshots of wonderful movies, or even some behind-the-scenes footage of the shooting of the movies, and so on. These could stimulate the reader's desire to buy the books and greatly increase the sales of the books. Lian had heard of Zheng Yujie's sudden appearance. Author Yang? Martel had mentioned poplar fruit to him many times. Lian did not say whether he was going to give it to her or not. He played Tai Chi with Zheng Yujie and turned to Zheng Yujie for the translation of poplar fruit. Normally, a publishing house would keep a book strictly confidential before it was published. However, Lian was an exception, so Zheng Yujie gave him the manuscript without any hesitation. Then he said he wanted to see you. Zheng Yujie waved her hand and said, I wanted you to fly to the capital, but I didn't expect you to already be there. Lian is in the capital? Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. Yes. Zheng Yujie said, I didn't know at first, but then I found out that he recently came to China to attend an awards ceremony and has been in the capital for the past few days. What do you think about today? Why don't we go back to the city today and arrange for you two to meet? Meeting is not a problem. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, Why does he want to see me? It feels like using a cannon to kill a mosquito. He is an international director, and I am just a translator. What can we do? It's like this. Zheng Yujie smiled. She had asked Lian this question before, and Lian had told her the reason without mincing his words. Did you convince Yang before? When Martel was here, didn't he vow that he would use his strength to reverse the situation where he was not recognized by others? Yes. Poplar Fruit nodded and said. This was still fresh in his memory. This promise was moved by Poplar Fruit's Yang? Of course. He remembered it was one of the important reasons for Martel's success. Now Lian is worried that once your translation is released, it will attract the attention of the people in China. Zheng Yujie smiled proudly and said, When his movie is released, people will compare the world described by your words with the world described by Lian, which will lower the evaluation of his movie. Lian also thinks that my book is good? Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. Zheng Yujie raised her head and said proudly, Of course, people see you as a big threat. Otherwise, why would he want to meet you? Then what does he think? Poplar Fruit asked in confusion, Does he want us to postpone the release? I think so. Zheng Yujie nodded and said, Then, what do you think we should do? Poplar Fruit had a headache and asked Zheng Yujie. He didn't have any particular thoughts about when he should start selling books, but he had followed Yang before. Martel had promised that they could sell very high sales without the help of Li Yan's movie. If he sold the book after the movie was released, wouldn't he be going back on his word? Of course. Poplar Fruit also had a little impulse to compete with Li, and Poplar Fruit was not an old man who saw through everything. Poplar Fruit still had the competitive spirit of a young man. It's not good to fall out with Li and if we publish the book in advance. Moreover, if we can cooperate with Lian, our results will be much better. Zheng Yujie said, But it's mainly up to you. When did the publishing house start to care about the ideas of the translator and even the author? Only Zheng Yujie thought about Poplar Fruit in everything. She would not hesitate to sell the publishing house. However, Poplar Fruit did not think about himself. He was the opposite of Zheng Yujie. He was not obsessed with whether he really wanted to compete with Lian. Let's do it according to your idea. I will listen to you in whatever way you think is appropriate. Poplar Fruit was thinking about two things. First, he did not want to embarrass Zheng Yujie because of his impulse. Second, he also wanted the sales of the book to be better. The sales were just a number for Poplar Fruit. Whether it sold well or not, Poplar Fruit would not lose a penny. On the contrary, if the sales were good, Zheng Yujie could get good results, and she would not be questioned by her colleagues. Okay, then I will tell you how to deal with it on the car back. Zheng Yujie did not refuse and said confidently. Poplar Fruit felt that it was time to go back to the city. After all, he had to listen to the arrangements of this guy and the production team. In the end, the guy agreed without hesitation. He said to ZMO and the others with a smile, Do you still need to ask for leave for this kind of thing? If you have a beautiful woman as your companion, you should have accompanied her long ago. Why do you always hang out with us men? Old Kong, do you have any soap to pick up? Who said no? Old Kong, who was unjustly implicated, said without showing any weakness, If you didn't pick it up yesterday, how could I not have it? Oh, everyone started to tease the guy. So that's how it is. I was wondering why you came to old Kong's house every day. Hey, don't we know too much? Vika showed an expression of fear of being killed. Huh. This group of people was always the most amusing. Chapter 400. Brother Yang, Brother Ge. Following Zheng Yujie from the suburbs back to the city, Poplar Fruit walked past the office area of Dongxin Publishing. Along the way, he kept waving at Kiki. She walked with small steps and looked at the person who called her father in surprise from time to time. Speaking of which, Poplar Fruit was quite famous in Dongxin. Last year, Poplar Fruit became famous because of sect leader Qiao's biography. This year, Poplar Fruit had a new book that was going to be released. It was listed in the list of Dongxin's most important works of the year. Other than Yanghua, the only ones who could receive such attention for 2 years in a row were those veteran authors, right? F.A. Why are you back in China? Poplar Fruit was surprised to see a familiar figure in the crowd. It was the staff member who was looking for a doctor with Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie in the Big Apple. Wasn't he a resident of Xinda in the United States? F.A. scratched his head embarrassedly and said, I didn't find a girlfriend in the United States. My mother was worried and asked me to come back to China. So, I came back to China to work for 2 years. It's okay. There are so many high-quality resources in China. You are so outstanding. It's not a problem. Poplar Fruit laughed. After greeting, Poplar Fruit followed Zheng Yujie back to her office. Come, Kiki. This is for you to play with. Zheng Yujie smiled and handed a big globe to Kiki. She wanted to tease Kiki and see how Kiki couldn't hold it. The globe was really big. It was as big as a basketball. However, it wasn't heavy. It was made of plastic and hollow. Kiki raised her head and held the globe. Suddenly, she was drowned by the globe and couldn't see her face. She giggled and stepped back, a little unsteadily. When Poplar Fruit saw that his daughter was about to sit on the floor, he quickly squatted down and supported Kiki's little, but from behind. He looked at Zheng Yujie resentfully and helped his daughter pick up the globe and put it on the floor. Papa, what is this? Kiki curiously circled around it, then came to the front of Poplar Fruit, leaned into her father's arms, and asked in a childish voice. A globe. Zheng Yujie answered on behalf of Poplar Fruit. She also squatted down and gently moved the globe. Along the bearings, the globe began to spin. In the summer, Zheng Yujie was dressed more casually. The front collar of the white floral short-sleeve t-shirt was a little low. After she squatted down, with the height of Poplar Fruit's eyes, he could just see the fullness wrapped in black gauze under the loose clothes. The 2 snow-white round lumps were squeezed into deep ravines. The delicate texture looked amazingly elastic, like a touch of tender white. It was so dazzling that Poplar Fruit instantly forgot to breathe. No, it should be that he breathed more heavily. He reluctantly moved his eyes away. He realized something. He raised his head and looked at Zheng Yujie's bright eyes. The shy and happy expression in Zheng Yujie's eyes made Poplar Fruit quickly move his eyes away like a frightened rabbit. Zheng Yujie was in a good mood. She thought that she was no longer attracted to Poplar Fruit. That night in the suburbs was too disappointing for Zheng Yujie. She thought that she would make some progress that night, but because Poplar Fruit was tormenting her and she couldn't help falling asleep, it was all for naught. Now it seemed that at least Poplar Fruit had feelings for her. Oomph. Zheng Yujie was competing with Fong Bei in her heart. You're young and lively, but I have my own mature seduction. Don't think that you're always around Poplar Fruit in Yangqing. Who knows who will have the last laugh? The atmosphere in the office was a little awkward. Poplar Fruit didn't say anything. It was so quiet that only the sound of Kiki playing with the globe could be heard. Fortunately, Zheng Yujie pressed the button to call her assistant outside and called in her bespectacled female assistant. Make an appointment with Mr. Li in. Zheng Yujie sat in her swivel chair and said to her assistant, tell him that Poplar Fruit has arrived in Beijing. Ask him when he's free. Also, ask him if he wants to meet at our company or find another place. The assistant held a notebook and took notes. Although she was cute and clumsy, she was very diligent and meticulous in her work. Zheng Yujie had a good impression of her. so she kept her by her side after returning from America. "Okay, boss. Do you have any other orders?" The assistant adjusted her glasses and asked. "Nothing." Zhang Yujia waved her hand, but she immediately stopped the assistant. "After you've arranged it, make a pot of tea and send it over." Zhang Yujia was a coffee drinker. She knew that poplar fruit didn't like coffee, so the tea was prepared for poplar fruit. "Okay." The bespectacled girl walked out. After this, the awkwardness and ambiguity between poplar fruit and Zhang Yujia disappeared. As long as the two of them didn't mention it, it wouldn't be as silent as before. "Boss, why do you have such a title?" Poplar fruit laughed. "Isn't it just a deputy editor?" Zhang Yujia proudly raised her head and said, "Why? Are you not convinced? Can't I have high ambitions? It's rare to have a loyal assistant. Why can't I be a boss?" "Sure." Poplar fruit shrugged and laughed. "I just think that if you want to be a boss so much, why don't you open your own company? It's not like you don't have money. AI, it's boring to open a company by myself. If you don't want to be a translator, come to Beijing and open a company with me. I'll open one." Zhang Yujia looked at poplar fruit with burning eyes. "Stop. I don't want to be a boss." Poplar fruit raised both of his hands and said, "Then come and work for me." Zhang Yujia said with a smile, "Come, let me hear you call me boss." She was joking, but she was looking forward to it. If she could work with poplar fruit, she would be excited just thinking about it. Poplar fruit shook his head. He would rather die than submit. "Okay, I'll tell you the truth." Zhang Yujia didn't know what to do with poplar fruit. She could only say, "It's not that I don't want to, but there aren't any good opportunities. I'm in the publishing industry now. I have a foundation and interest in this area. But you also know that the publishing industry is saturated. Moreover, because of the emergence of new media, it seems that the publishing industry can't last for many years. Without any good ideas, Zhang Yujia wouldn't rashly start a business." Poplar fruit wasn't interested in this topic. The two of them talked about their respective situations during this period. Poplar fruit's situation was that he experienced the taste of the podium once. Of course, he also confessed to Fong Bei, although he was temporarily rejected. Poplar fruit wasn't stupid enough to tell Zhang Yujia about this matter. Zhang Yujia also didn't want to know about his progress with Fong Bei. In Zhang Yujia's opinion, as long as poplar fruit wasn't married, she wouldn't give up, even if he was married, and "I'll snatch him over." Chapter 401. Poplar fruit was sitting in Zhang Yujia's office. At this time, a middle-aged woman came in from outside the hall. Her short white hair revealed her age, but she didn't seem to care at all. She was dressed very well. She was wearing a dark red suit with a skirt and stockings. It seemed to have the same effect as Zhang Ailing's gorgeous Cheongsam. Back then, Zhang Ailing was full of sadness and sadness, but she also wanted to cover it up with her innate nobility and elegance, so that those men would not look down on her. And she seemed to want to use the most red and youthful clothes to set off her dying years. Even though she was no longer young, she was still full of energy, just like when she took over the editorial department more than 10 years ago. She was high-spirited, and no one dared to question her ability. That's right, the person who came in was the chief editor of Dongxin Publishing, Pang Yu. However, after walking into the office area of the editorial department, Pang Yu's fierce temperament suddenly changed. She became much more amiable. Along the way, the staff greeted her one after another. Poplar fruit's treatment couldn't be compared to this. Under her change, the editorial department, which was the core of the publishing company, became particularly harmonious. Although there were occasional conflicts, it was human nature. Generally speaking, the publishing company's work efficiency improved a lot under such an atmosphere. More talented people came in and took root in Dongxin. Pang Yu could proudly say that the more than 10 years she was in charge of Dongxin were more than 10 years of rapid development. However, when Pang Yu walked into the office, she lost her confidence and relaxed. She sank into her leather swivel chair, and her face showed a touch of tiredness. Since the beginning of this year, Pang Yu had encountered a lot of trouble. Someone was eyeing Dongxin Publishing. To be exact, they were eyeing the position where Pang Yu was sitting now. If it was an ordinary person, Pang Yu would have just laughed it off and wouldn't have taken it to heart. This was because in the past 10 years, including the 10 years before she became the editor-in-chief, Pang Yu had made great contributions to Dong Xian. It could be said that half of Dong Xian's achievements were due to her contributions. If she wanted to shake Pang Yu's position, she would have to wait another 10 years until she retired. However, the person who was eyeing her position was not an ordinary person. He was the son of an aristocratic family, and his family background was not inferior to Zheng Yujia's family. It was funny to say that the son of an aristocratic family did not care about how long he would stay in this position. He was only interested because Dongxin had created a big wave in the publishing world with cult master Qiao's biography last year. He was an estate-owned enterprise and could be considered as half a person in the system. The chief editor position of Dongxin Publishing was just a gold-plated stepping stone for him. Once he was in this position, he would be able to enter the central government's publicity department through his family's connections in less than 2 years. That was all. However, his intention was a big threat to Pang Yu. After all, every carrot had its own hole. If he wanted to sit in this position, Pang Yu would have to give it up. Then, the question was, where would Pang Yu stay? He couldn't stay at home for 2 years and wait for this son of an aristocrat to come back, right? In China, there was no such thing as turning back. Pang Yu was not willing to be demoted, and Dongxin was not thick-skinned enough to ask for it. It was also impossible for him to be promoted. The next step was to be the president and vice president of the publishing house. That position was not a position that could be taken just because one was qualified. There were many twists and turns in it. If it was possible to be promoted, Pang Yu would have been promoted a few years ago. Moreover, the president and vice president of the publishing house had not reached the age limit yet. How could they give up their positions? Pang Yu's only hope was to ask his old classmate, Zheng Yujia's mother, if she could give him some support. However, she felt a little uncertain because she had discussed it with Deng Baoyan before. Deng Baoyan could not guarantee anything. After all, the other party was powerful, and it was impossible for them to start a war because of her. Of course, Deng Baoyan did not say this directly. She asked Pang Yu if he wanted to change to another publishing house, or if the Zheng family could help her find a job in the system. After all, she was not young anymore. How could Pang Yu be willing to change to another publishing house and a new job? He was not willing to give up the business that he had fought so hard for to someone else. That was why he'd been dragging it out. He would take one step at a time and see what would happen next. There was no news about when that young master would come. Maybe this year, maybe next year, or maybe he would forget after a while. Is little Jiep back yet? Pang Yu called his assistant over and asked after closing his eyes to rest. She wanted to ask Zheng Yujia about her work. Although she herself was a little weak, she still insisted. As long as she was in power, she must do her job well. Even if it was her last struggle, she must bloom the most brilliant fireworks. The assistant stood respectfully and replied, "She came back. She just came back." "Oh, really? Where did this girl go yesterday? I can't find her." Pang Yu was going to call Zheng Yujia over to talk about the progress of Young School. She may have gone out to pick someone up yesterday. The assistant smiled sweetly and said, "I just saw her come back with poplar fruit. I heard that Director Lian is also coming." "Poplar fruit? You mean the poplar fruit in Yangcheng?" When Pang Yu heard the name, she frowned. As for the Director Lian, it was completely out of her scope of thinking. The assistant was shocked and thought that she had said something wrong. She said carefully, "Yes, it's the poplar fruit who translated the biography of Steve Jobs for us last year." "Chief editor, is there a problem?" Pang Yu also realized that she had overreacted. Her face eased and she smiled. "No, I'm just curious about why he came. I heard that Director Lian wanted to discuss something with him. So he rushed over?" The assistant said with some uncertainty. Yes, no. What do you mean by that?" Pang Yu educated. "In the future, if you want to know something clearly, then talk about it. Don't be ambiguous." Yes. The assistant quickly nodded and said, "Chief editor, do you want me to call Deputy Editor Zheng over?" Pang Yu pondered for a while, then gently shook her head and said, "No, you don't need to. That's all." I have nothing to do here. You can go out." After the assistant left, Pang Yu sat in the chair and fell into deep thought. She gently tapped the notebook on the table with a pen, slowly showing the struggle in her heart. Alas, Pang Yu sighed softly. She finally picked up the phone and dialed a number. "Hello, Sister Yin. I'm Pang Yu. There's something I want to tell you." Chapter 402. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Lin arrived at Dongxin Publishing on time. He was also a busy man. After coming to Beijing, he had to entertain a lot of people. It was said that he only took 2 hours to meet with Poplar Fruit, and he had to attend a charity dinner in the evening. "Go. Come on. You're always the best." Zheng Yujia waved Kiki's little fist and smiled at Poplar Fruit. She didn't go with Poplar Fruit, but stayed in the office with Kiki. It was definitely inappropriate to bring Kiki to the conference room. If the assistant with glasses took her, Poplar Fruit felt that Kiki would make trouble. Now that she had grown up, she didn't say that she had to stay by her father's side, but Kiki was still not easy to deal with in a strange environment where she couldn't see her familiar father. It was fine with Zheng Yuji next to her. Kiki was also very familiar with her, and there were endless magical things in Zheng Yuji's office, in Kiki's opinion. She was still in a state of excitement after playing with them for a whole day. "Papa's great." Kiki followed suit and cheered. She didn't know why she was so happy. They were just preparing to go. "I will." Poplar Fruit also waved his hand to cheer himself up and walked to the conference room with a smile. Poplar Fruit was not good at business negotiations. He could only memorize some of the key points that Zheng Yuji told him. But when he thought that there was an international director sitting in the small room in the conference room, Poplar Fruit felt a little nervous and excited. With such a mood, Poplar Fruit pushed the door and went in. A man with gray hair was sitting inside. Poplar Fruit was familiar with his face. He had a square face with a gentle and elegant smile. His eyes were not sharp, but gave people a feeling of amiability. Lian was sitting right in front of Poplar Fruit, just like the photos on the internet. "Hello, Mr. Lian. I'm Poplar Fruit." Poplar Fruit quickly walked up and extended his hands to Li in Long Tianyong. "Martel said that you're young, but I didn't expect you to be this young." Lian shook the Poplar Fruit's hand and smiled. "Haha, can I take this as a compliment?" Poplar Fruit sat down beside Lian and laughed. It was just the two of them talking, so there was no need for them to sit opposite each other. They were too far apart, and Lian could not even see Poplar Fruit's face clearly. "Youth is an asset. When I was your age, I was still an unknown student." Lian smiled. "So, you can take it as my affirmation of you. The industry is different." Poplar Fruit shook his head and smiled. "Even after a few decades, I won't be able to reach your achievements. You've set too many milestones for the Chinese in the international film industry, which is beyond our reach. Don't belittle yourself. It's said that every trade produces its own master, and the translation industry can still produce results. Just like Mr. G from Capital University who passed away, didn't he also become a master of his generation?" Lian said with a smile. "Wasn't it negotiation? How did it become a mutual compliment?" Poplar Fruit had some doubts in his heart. He had to admit that it felt great to be praised by an internationally renowned director. However, just when Poplar Fruit was feeling a little smug, he suddenly remembered that Zheng Yujia had said that during a negotiation, there might be people who could be praised. When you get carried away by the praise, you'll be cheated. With vigilance, Poplar Fruit quickly restrained his complacent mood. As they chatted, Poplar Fruit found that this negotiation didn't seem to be a negotiation. Why did it feel a bit like two friends who hadn't seen each other for many years catching up? Director Lian's storytelling skills were really high. He talked with Poplar Fruit about the interesting things when he was shooting the movie Young School. It was simply endless. More than half an hour had passed, and Poplar Fruit didn't see Lian returning to the main topic. However, didn't Zheng Yujia say that negotiation required patience? Whoever couldn't wait and made a request first would lose half the battle. Poplar Fruit had a lot of patience. Anyway, Lian was anxious about this matter, and Poplar Fruit wasn't in a hurry at all. In addition, Poplar Fruit could spend all his time negotiating with this great director today. Kiki was taken care of by Zheng Yujia. so she wouldn't be hungry or cold. However, Lian was different. He had a lot of things to do, and it was difficult for him to take out 2 hours. Therefore, Poplar Fruit treated it as a way to pass the time and listen to Lian's stories. The interesting things that Lian said were really interesting. For example, in order to shoot the underwater part of the movie, Lian took his 2 children to learn how to dive, and he even got a diving license. In order to experience the true power of the sea, he brought all the production crew with him. They took the coastal rescue team's speedboat and went deep into the sea. In the storm, the 9-foot-high waves rolled the sturdy speedboat around, and the whole crew was almost wiped out. Poplar Fruit admired him. In order to make a good movie, Lian sacrificed too much. This reminded Poplar Fruit of Brokeback Mountain, which won Lian his first Academy Award for Best Director. Lian's pursuit of many details made that impactful and iconoclastic movie intoxicating. This was the effect that he wanted. Lian's eyes flashed with an imperceptible slyness. Poplar Fruit was affected by Lian's personal charm, and his face unreservedly showed his admiration for Lian. The negotiation had dragged on for so long, and it was finally time to start. Lian gently put forward his request at the right time. The general idea was, it's not easy for everyone, and I invested so much in making this movie. Can you consider it for me? Can you do me a favor and delay the publication of the book until the movie is released? Can't you do me a favor and delay the publication of the book until the movie is released? But did Lian really win? Poplar Fruit was not brainwashed by Lian. Although he really admired Lian's attitude of striving for perfection, he still remembered the conditions that Zheng Yujie had prepared for him. It's okay to not release the book in advance, but we should also be compensated. This compensation was that Lian had to agree to let the publishing house hitch a ride with him. At least in China, the book and the movie had to be released at the same time, and Lian had to give enough support, not to mention a lot of beautiful illustrations. If possible, Zheng Yujie hoped that Lian could allow Dongxin to bring the book to the premiere of his movie in China. Lian really didn't expect that Poplar Fruit, who was so young, could still keep a clear head. Hearing the conditions proposed by Poplar Fruit, Lian took a deep breath. The simultaneous release was not unacceptable. Lian knew that if the book and the movie were released at the same time, people would choose the movie more, because the movie only had a screening period of about a month, and the book could be read at any time. But to let Dongxin launch the book at the same time as his movie's premiere, this price was a bit too high. If it were someone else, Lian wouldn't even consider it if they offered a few million. Chapter 403. You agree? Poplar Fruit asked in a daze. Yes. Seeing Poplar Fruit's expression, Lian regretted it, but he could not take back what he had said. He nodded and said with a smile. Poplar Fruit couldn't believe it. He hadn't even started a deal with Lian, but Lian agreed after thinking about it. Although he had thought of some excuses, Poplar Fruit could not persuade Lian. He had made up his mind to take a step back when Lian insisted on not accepting it. He only wanted to keep the request of releasing the book simultaneously. As for the illustrations, they were not worth mentioning. Lian had no reason not to provide them. Lian was actually frightened by Poplar Fruit. When he saw Poplar Fruit recover from the state of being bewitched by him in an instant, he thought that Poplar Fruit was pretending to be young. Maybe Poplar Fruit was a negotiation master. It was getting late, and Lian had to rush to attend the charity banquet. He did not have time to engage in another 300 rounds of verbal warfare with a master negotiator. He thought about the pros and cons and agreed in the end. Although he regretted it, Lian didn't take it too seriously. His purpose had been achieved. It didn't matter if Dongxin took advantage of him a little. Besides, it was his premiere ceremony. The time he arranged for Dongxin could be long or short. He didn't need to introduce Dongxin's book too much. It seemed that his loss was not great. In fact, doing business was about win-win. In Lian's opinion, it was a loss for him to let Dongxin release the book at his premiere ceremony. But who knew what would happen in a few months? Maybe his movie would be influenced by Poplar Fruit. That was another story. When he left, Lian still showed his appreciation for Poplar Fruit. Now he was sincere. Before that, he heard young Martel's words. Martel had long been curious about Yang Guo's work. After he saw Yang Guo's translation, he felt that this translator was a talented one. He could even feel the thread of this book. The Chinese version of my movie doesn't have translated subtitles yet. Are you interested in translating subtitles? Lian asked with a smile. Although the pay is not much, only a few thousand yuan according to the market price, this is a good opportunity. You can watch our movie before others. Really? Poplar Fruit was a little moved. It was such a blissful experience to be able to watch a wonderful movie before so many people in the world. Of course, if you're willing, I can get someone to bring a copy over. Not now. It might take a few months. Lian smiled. Sure. Poplar Fruit happily agreed. He hesitated for a moment and asked, Can I bring 2 people with me? One of them is my daughter. She's a little over a year old. The other is my friend, Zheng Yujie, whom you've met before. It's okay, but I don't recommend you take your daughter to watch this movie. There are tigers and some scary scenes. It's not good for the child. Lian readily agreed. He laughed and patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder. Because he had something to do, Lian pushed open the door and said goodbye to the others. He then left in a hurry with his assistant. Poplar Fruit followed Zheng Yujie, who had been waiting for a long time, back to her office. As soon as the door closed, Zheng Yujie asked excitedly, How was it? How was it? Sigh. Poplar Fruit pretended to shake his head and sigh. He still wanted to give Zheng Yujie a surprise that would be suppressed first and then raised later. In the end, Poplar Fruit's acting was too bad. He should have been dejected, but he couldn't help but smile. Zheng Yujie looked at him and waved to Kiki. Kiki, come here. Kiki bounced over. Zheng Yujie picked up Kiki. She pointed to Poplar Fruit and asked Kiki, Kiki, do you think your papa is happy or unhappy now? To Chi-Chi, this question was a little brainless. Her little brain couldn't understand it, so she tilted her little head and didn't know how to answer. Well, don't make things difficult for Kiki. Poplar Fruit surrendered. He knew that Zheng Yujie had seen through his lies. The negotiation was successful. Lian agreed to all the conditions. Really? We can release our book at the same time as his premiere? Zheng Yujie was really happy now. With this condition, she had a lot more room to maneuver. Not to mention other things. With Lian's attention, there would be a lot of media present at that time. Yes. Poplar Fruit smiled and took Kiki over. Poplar Fruit was very happy because he had gained unexpected results after struggling for almost 2 hours. He moved his mouth closer and said, Kiki, kiss Daddy. Daddy has been out for so long. Did you miss Daddy? Yes. Chi-Chi replied crisply. She pulled her father's face with both hands and went up to him to kiss him. Good girl. Poplar Fruit rubbed his daughter's face happily. In the past, Kiki was pricked by Poplar Fruit's beard. Later, in order for his daughter to be close to him at any time, Poplar Fruit developed the habit of shaving every morning. His other nails were also trimmed very short. He looked fresh and refreshed. Unlike other sloppy fathers, Poplar Fruit was a model father. Tell me how you convinced him. Zheng Yujie looked at him expectantly, as if she was looking at a big hero. Poplar Fruit proudly told Zheng Yujie about the process. That's it? Zheng Yujie asked blankly after hearing Poplar Fruit's request and Li An's agreement. That's it. What else do you want? Poplar Fruit laughed. TSK, I thought you spent the last 2 hours negotiating with him. This is simply effortless. Zheng Yujie pursed her lips. To think that I even thought of so many ideas for you. The process is not important. What's important is that we got the result we wanted. Poplar Fruit persuaded her. All right, he also asked me to translate the subtitles for him. Poplar Fruit laughed. You agreed to such a boring thing? Zheng Yujie was not interested and asked lazily. Of course I agreed. Poplar Fruit laughed. There's a small benefit. Okay. What benefit? Zheng Yujie asked. You can watch the movie for free and in advance. Poplar Fruit winked at her. He also agreed to let you watch it together. You can watch it in front of billions of people. Watch it with you. Zheng Yujie's eyes lit up as she asked. Her focus was obviously different from that of Poplar Fruit. She did not care whether she watched the movie earlier or later. She felt that it was not as important as being able to watch a movie with Poplar Fruit. However, Poplar Fruit did not pay attention to it. He laughed and said, "Of course." After that, only Zheng Yujia's happy cries could be heard in the entire room. Chapter 404. What time is it now? Poplar Fruit asked. It's almost 6 o'clock. Zheng Yujia replied. Poplar Fruit had been in the meeting room for more than an hour. If it wasn't summer, it would have been dark already. Then we have to go, Poplar Fruit said. Kiki wants to eat dinner, and we have to find a hotel to stay in. Poplar Fruit didn't want to go back to the set today, so he might as well go back tonight. Stay in a hotel. Zheng Yujia raised her eyebrows and said unhappily, Let's go to my house. Let's stay in a hotel. It's inconvenient. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said awkwardly, What's inconvenient about it? Didn't you stay at my house last time? Zheng Yujia said as she held her bag in her hand. That was then, and this is now, Poplar Fruit muttered in his heart. If it was before June, Poplar Fruit wouldn't have refused Zheng Yujia's invitation. But the situation was different now. He had confessed to Fong Beibei and swore to never hurt Fong Beibei again. If he went to Zheng Yujia's house, wouldn't that be a mistake? I believe you. Fong Beibei's message before he went online was still vivid in his mind. Poplar Fruit didn't want to betray her trust. Zheng Yujia saw that Poplar Fruit was so insistent. She felt a little jealous, but she quickly adjusted herself and asked, Okay, I won't force you to stay at my house, but you can come to my house for dinner, right? I haven't tasted your cooking in a long time. Poplar Fruit was still very soft-hearted. He refused such a request. Besides, it wasn't a big deal to go to a friend's house for dinner. He spent the night there. All right, let's go. Kiki is hungry, right? Poplar Fruit rubbed Kiki's head. Yeah. Kiki nodded seriously. She touched her stomach and looked at Zheng Yujia pitifully. I was defeated by you. Zheng Yujia rubbed Kiki's hair affectionately. When Poplar Fruit left, it wasn't time to get off work yet, but no one said anything. After all, Poplar Fruit wasn't an employee of the publishing house. As for Zheng Yujia, she could leave if she wanted to. What was the big deal about getting off work early? After they left, Pang Yu's assistant quietly left his seat, knocked on the door, and entered Pang Yu's office. Your cooking skills didn't fall behind. Zheng Yujia didn't feed Kiki properly. Instead, she ran into the kitchen from time to harass Poplar Fruit. She held a porcelain bowl in one hand and patted Poplar Fruit's shoulder with the other hand. Big sister, my dish went overboard when you messed around. Poplar Fruit felt helpless. Zheng Yujia was in his way, so he was a little slow in washing the dishes. He hurriedly moved the stir-fried vegetables from the pot to the plate. Is it? Not at all. Zheng Yujia glanced at it. The vegetables were green and tender, and they smelled fresh and fragrant. How could she say that such a dish that looked, smelled, and tasted too much? It was a little overboard. Under the fire, if it was stir-fried for a few more seconds, the vegetables would be overcooked. Zheng Yujia, who didn't have a sensitive tongue and wasn't picky about the taste, couldn't feel it. However, Poplar Fruit still cared about it. Well, don't come in. You didn't even feed half of a bowl of rice. You see, Kiki is watching TV again. It's not a good habit to eat while watching TV. Poplar Fruit said to Zheng Yujia, Can't you watch TV for a while? Zheng Yujia retorted. However, when she saw that Poplar Fruit was going to argue with her, she quickly changed her words. I see. Hello, Father Yin. Goodbye, Father Yin. Zheng Yujia muttered and walked out, closing the door behind her. Kiki was still very keen on watching TV. Just now, she kept pestering Zheng Yujia to turn on the TV for her, saying that she wanted to watch Pleasant Goat. Zheng Yujia wasn't like Fong Beibei. Fong Beibei would spoil Kiki, but she didn't need to spoil Kiki. However, Zheng Yujia really spoiled Kiki. She would give Kiki whatever she wanted. If Kiki wanted to watch TV, she would turn it on without saying anything. This might be related to Zheng Yujia's own childhood experience. When she was young, she wasn't by Zheng Mingxing's side. At that time, her mother wasn't in the capital, and the person who took care of her was that super rich aunt. Her aunt believed that girls should be raised well. Therefore, Zheng Yuji didn't lack anything since she was young. Other children would be lucky if they had 1,000 yuan pocket money a month, but Zheng Yuji already had a credit card that could overdraw 10 million yuan. She was treating Chi-Chi the same way now. Not to mention the disadvantages. There were none for the time being, but there were many advantages. At least, Chi-Chi now felt that this beautiful Annie was so cool that she especially liked to hang out with Zheng Yuji. After the meal was ready, Poplar Fruit came out, but Kiki didn't have such good treatment. Come over here and sit down. How many times have I told you not to watch TV while eating? Poplar Fruit scolded with a straight face. Yuji, you really don't know this at all. Poplar Fruit was angry. Although Kiki was a little unwilling, she still walked over obediently. She pouted, and her eyes were a little red. Zheng Yuji was scolded. She stuck out her tongue, turned off the TV, and walked over. Poplar Fruit took the bowl in Zheng Yuji's hand. There were still 2 or 3 mouthfuls of rice in it. Just as he was about to lose his temper, he saw that his daughter was afraid and wanted to cry, and his heart softened. Poplar Fruit remembered that he took Kiki to the ravine these few days. Kiki didn't complain at all. He carried his daughter to his lap and gently kissed Kiki's little face. He smiled and said, "Okay, don't feel wronged. I'll open it for you after dinner, okay?" Kiki raised her little hand and rubbed the corner of her eyes. She nodded and said, "Okay, come, let's eat." Poplar Fruit scooped up a small spoonful of porridge with a smile and handed it to Kiki. Yangwood didn't know if it was because they were eating outside and Yangwood didn't have time to think about how to make delicious food for Chi-Chi, so the porridge didn't taste so good. Or it was because Chi-Chi was thinking about the TV. After eating a mouthful of porridge, Chi-Chi touched her belly and said vaguely, "Papa, Chi-Chi is full." "That won't do. You haven't eaten enough." Poplar Fruit knew that Kiki's appetite was more than half of the average child's. If she wasn't full, she would say that she was hungry at night. Therefore, Poplar Fruit cooked every meal strictly according to Kiki's standards. "Come, eat 2 more mouthfuls. If you don't eat, Annie Yuji and Papa will have to wait for you to eat. The food will be cold." Poplar Fruit scooped another spoonful of porridge and tried to persuade her. Kiki found that she couldn't fool her father. That hateful little spoon reached over again. She reluctantly looked at the TV from the corner of her eyes and obediently opened her mouth. Chapter 405. While eating, Poplar Fruit glanced at Kiki, who was sitting in front of the TV without blinking. He turned around and asked Zheng Yuji, "What a coincidence. Whenever she wants to watch TV, there's a pleasant goat. Don't you know that there's a type of TV called digital TV? Don't tell me you don't even know about the existence of a TV top box?" Zheng Yuji laughed. "What's that?" Poplar Fruit shook his head and asked. Poplar Fruit wanted Zheng Yuji to explain. Zheng Yuji confidently opened her mouth to speak, but suddenly realized that she didn't know how to explain. She knew about the functions of a TV top box, but it was very complicated and difficult to describe in one sentence. Moreover, she didn't remember the technical terms on the encyclopedia. It's a good thing. You know that it can be used to watch HD TV, and it can watch old TV shows. Zheng Yuji waved her hand and said domineeringly. "Okay." Poplar Fruit didn't want to delve into this issue. He asked, "By the way, last time you said that the matter had been resolved. That Lisa Chow didn't harass you anymore, right?" "No, I don't know where he went. He didn't seem to be in Beijing for the past few months," Zheng Yuji said indifferently. "Besides, even if he still has the guts, I'll beat him to death the next time he comes." "Beat him to death? You?" Poplar Fruit laughed. Hey, don't let down on people, okay?" Zheng Yuji could hear the disbelief and ridicule in Poplar Fruit's tone. She raised her head and looked at Poplar Fruit disdainfully and said, "In any case, I, Zheng Yuji, was the overlord of the courtyard. At that time, which little brat wasn't afraid of me? Lisa Chow was beaten by me since he was young." Poplar Fruit still didn't believe her. He laughed and said, "Since you're so powerful, why didn't you beat him before?" "That's because I was afraid that if I beat him up, he would go back and call his parents. It's so troublesome." Zheng Yuji blushed and said, "It's different now. My family didn't agree to his engagement with me and canceled it. If he doesn't let go, I won't feel guilty even if I beat him up. Poplar Fruit laughed. All right, I know you're good. Let's eat. With such a perfunctory attitude, it was obvious that he still didn't believe it. Zhang Yujie said angrily, let me tell you, I'm a Taekwondo red belt, and I've only been practicing since university. In the Taekwondo dojo, not even 1 or 2 men can get close to me. Why are you practicing Taekwondo? Poplar Fruit asked doubtfully. There are so many traditional martial arts in our country, and any one of them is better than those from Korea. Who said that? Zhang Yujie shook her head and continued. According to what I know, those martial arts dojos in Beijing don't have any real skills. They even like to challenge the dojos. There was once when they came back to our dojo, but they were sent flying with a kick from our dojo. Those people are ignorant and incompetent, but that doesn't mean that our country's traditional martial arts aren't good. Poplar Fruit put down his chopsticks and tried to persuade Zhang Yujie. He wanted to change Zhang Yujie's mind. I came across a Xingyi martial dojo in Guangzhou, and the people there are pretty powerful. Naturally, Poplar Fruit was only talking about the dojo master that posed a threat to him. As for the others, Poplar Fruit felt that they were just beginners. I hate those people who keep talking about Taiji Fist and Xingyi martial arts. Zhang Yujie said with disdain. Those people flaunt themselves as disciples of many generations and think that Taiji Fist is one of the 4 major martial arts in the world, but in fact, it's weak. Hey, your words have a wide range of effect. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, I am a Taiji Fist practitioner. You're different. Zhang Yujie explained, when I was a sophomore, there was a senior from the Martial Arts Association who wanted to pursue me. He pestered me every day and even said that he was a 45th generation disciple of Taiji Fist. He was so impressive. This was the first time that Poplar Fruit heard that there were so many generations of Taiji Fist. According to the calculation of 20 years per generation, wouldn't the first generation be 900 years ago? At that time, Zhang Sanfeng wasn't even born yet. What happened after that? Poplar Fruit asked while holding back his laughter. After that, I told him that he would fight with me. If I lost, I would be your girlfriend, and if you lost, don't bother me. Zhang Yujie smiled proudly. As a result, he was still slowly posing there. I went up and kicked him, and he never dared to appear again. No way. So weak? Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. Even if the seniority was exaggerated, if he was able to enter the Martial Arts Association, he should still have some skills. How could he not even be able to withstand 1 round? Zhang Yujie looked at Poplar Fruit's eyes, as if he was suspecting that she was making up a story. She was so excited that she jumped up from the chair and shouted, You don't believe me? Let's spar. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, Forget it. You're no match for me. You know that. Last time in Poplar Fruit's hometown, Zhang Yujie had personally witnessed Poplar Fruit fighting 1 against 3, although he defeated them 1 by 1, and even defeated a man with a hoe. If you can't beat me, then why don't you go easy on me? Zhang Yujie said angrily. You are not allowed to fight back. I will show you the strength of a red belt. Helpless against Zhang Yujie, Poplar Fruit had no choice but to stand up. Fortunately, Zhang Yujie's house was very big. After moving the chair, there was a lot of space. Poplar Fruit stood in the middle of the field with his hands hanging down. He stood very relaxed, not caring at all about Zhang Yujie's eagerness. He even had the time to look at Kiki. However, Kiki was busy watching TV and did not pay any attention to them. Zhang Yujie, who was lightly hopping on the ground barefooted, shouted in a clear and crisp voice and kicked up with her leg. This was not a habit of Zhang Yujie's. When learning Taekwondo, the requirement was to shout before making a move. It felt like she was using her voice to intimidate others. In fact, this was not the only effect. Research had shown that some muscles could contract 10% to 14% faster when they made a sound, thus increasing the speed and momentum of their movements. Zhang Yujie kicked at him. Poplar Fruit did not dodge and took Zhang Yujie's kick head-on. Poplar Fruit did this on purpose. He wanted to see if Zhang Yujie was as strong as she claimed. With his current physical fitness, not to mention Zheng Yujie, even if an adult man kicked him, he could completely withstand it. Of course, what Zheng Yujie said was true. Her kicking skills were quite powerful. Using the hip joint as an axis, she relied on twisting to exert force. Poplar Fruit felt that the strength of her kick exceeded that of an adult man. Aya! Zheng Yujie hurriedly retracted her kick and anxiously walked over. Why didn't you dodge? Did it hurt? Zheng Yujie looked nervous. She was afraid that Poplar Fruit would be injured by her kick. She pulled Poplar Fruit's arm and flipped up his sleeve to check. Chapter 406. It's okay, don't worry. Poplar Fruit smiled and stopped Zheng Yujie's hand from touching his arm. Your strength is not bad, but it still doesn't hurt. Why don't you dodge? Even if you don't dodge, you should block it. Zheng Yujie rebuked. Didn't you say that you can't fight back? Poplar Fruit teased her. You can't fight back because you can't hit me. I didn't say that you have to stand still and let me hit you, Zheng Yujie said angrily. You're a language expert. Can't you understand such simple words? Okay. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, I won't stand still and let you hit me. Come on, let's finish this quickly and go back to eat. Poplar Fruit was still standing in the same place. His body seemed to be moving, but not moving, and he looked at Zheng Yujie directly. If Zheng Yujie was an expert with a little bit of fighting experience, he would definitely feel very uncomfortable because Poplar Fruit's posture was too strange. It seemed like there were flaws everywhere, but he also felt like he couldn't touch Poplar Fruit. As long as he moved, there would be thousands of changes in his opponent, making it impossible for him to attack. But Zheng Yujie wasn't like that. She was fearless because she didn't know anything. She shouted loudly, Come and take this. Then she kicked over. Taekwondo didn't have many variations. To put it bluntly, it was just kicking with the feet, and the hands were basically decorations. Front kick, back kick, side kick, jump kick, left leg kick, right leg kick, back kick, left leg kick, right leg kick, back and forth. It was just a few tricks. Poplar Fruit easily saw through it. Poplar Fruit gently waved his left hand, and Zheng Yujie's kick was like a sparrow in Xiao Longnu's hand. It flew happily, but it couldn't escape from Xiao Longnu's palm. As long as the Poplar Fruit diverted a little of the force, Zheng Yujie's foot would fall into the Poplar Fruit's control. However, he was still a gentleman and didn't have the intention to play with it. He put it down as soon as he touched it. Zheng Yujie felt as if she had kicked a ball of cotton. It was too unpleasant. Bang! She took 2 steps back, let out a delicate shout, and stomped on the ground. She actually used the extremely difficult move that she had used when she was in the red belt examination, flying turn side kick. This move was a little difficult for girls. It was already difficult to control one's body in the air. It was too difficult to jump and turn around. Zheng Yujie thought that she was still as light as a swallow as when she was a postgraduate student in the United States. After all, she had been working for a long time now. Moreover, she had not been able to move properly before the fight. In the end, when she jumped up and turned around, she lost her bearings and almost fell down. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. His left hand held Zheng Yujie's waist, and his right hand hugged her leg. He directly caught her in the air. This holding posture was very similar to a male dancer holding a female dancer and spinning her around in a dance. If one didn't watch the first half, one would think that the two were dancing at this time. However, because Zheng Yujie was flipped over, she was facing Poplar Fruit. It looked like a couple, a male carrying a female princess. Ah! Zheng Yujie screamed and opened her eyes in shock. Only then did she realize that she was lying in Poplar Fruit's arms. Poplar Fruit didn't wait for Zheng Yujie to blush, and he put her down. Are you done? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Seeing Poplar Fruit's smiling face, Zheng Yujie's little bit of happiness and drunkenness in her heart suddenly disappeared. She said unwillingly, I'm fine. After that, she didn't scream this time. She suddenly straightened her left foot, and her right foot kicked from the inside of her left thigh to the back in a straight line. Moreover, it was a very high kick. The angle of both legs was more than 120 degrees. After the kick, Her right foot quickly retracted along the original route. This was a very famous chop move in Taekwondo. All the movements were done in one go, and it was very pleasing to watch. However, it was only very pleasing to watch. Poplar Fruit stretched out his hands and caught Zhang Yujia's long legs on his shoulders. "Okay, stop fooling around," Poplar Fruit said helplessly. "No." Zhang Yujia's right leg was controlled by Poplar Fruit. She pouted and said, "I'm just fooling around." Zhang Yujia's left leg was seen jumping forward on tiptoe. The closer she got, the wider her legs were. It was as if Poplar Fruit was pressing down on one of her legs to make her pull the ligament. Before Poplar Fruit could react, Zhang Yujia was in front of him. "That's amazing." Poplar Fruit stared at her with his mouth agape. At this time, Zhang Yujia's right leg was raised high, and her left leg was also standing straight. The two legs almost formed a straight line. It was the legendary one-legged, and it was a vertical split. Well, Poplar Fruit's focus was that strange. He didn't see that Zhang Yujia was already very close to him. She looked up at Poplar Fruit's handsome face, and her eyes began to blur. Poplar Fruit initially raised his head to look at Zhang Yujia's toes, but when he lowered his head, he saw Zhang Yujia's seductive eyes. That pretty and flawless face was very close, and her red and tender lips were slightly open. A fragrant scent seemed to hit his nose. Zhang Yujia was aroused by Poplar Fruit's heavy breathing. She stood on her tiptoes and couldn't help but kiss him. In the end, she closed her eyes. Zhang Yujia felt that she was kissing something smooth. She opened her eyes and found Poplar Fruit's hand in front of his mouth. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit's hand was facing outward. Otherwise, Zhang Yujia would have kissed the place that she had just trampled on with her feet. "You're being naughty again," Poplar Fruit helplessly said. He took a step back to the right and gently put down Zhang Yujia's right leg. "Yeah." Zhang Yujia wanted to say something, but when the words came to her mouth, she didn't know what to say. She could only mutter, "You're so boring." Unable to continue fighting, Poplar Fruit and Zhang Yujia returned to the table and sat down to continue eating. Poplar Fruit silently ate 2 mouthfuls of rice. He didn't pick up any food and looked a little preoccupied. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" Zhang Yujia pointed at Poplar Fruit with her chopsticks and asked. As if he had made up his mind, Poplar Fruit turned his head and said to Zhang Yujia, "Yujia, I think we really can't go on like this. It's very dangerous." "Why?" Zhang Yujia asked, even though she already knew the answer. "Because I confessed to Fong Bei Bei." Poplar Fruit was anxious. He wanted to clarify this matter with Zhang Yujia. Zhang Yujia covered her ears, shook her head desperately, and shouted, "I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it." Poplar Fruit closed his mouth. Zhang Yujia stopped. She looked at Poplar Fruit vigilantly and said, "Don't say it." But Poplar Fruit opened his mouth, but was interrupted by Zhang Yujia. "No buts." Zhang Yujia raised her eyebrows and said domineeringly, "I don't care what happened between you and her. In any case, I will persevere." "But, no buts, Zhang Yujia, am not a person who will back down so easily." Zhang Yujia bit her lower lip, proudly raised her head and said, "It's okay. I will wait until the day you accept me." Chapter 407. After dinner, Poplar Fruit suggested taking Kiki to the hotel. "What's the hurry? Let's play for a while more." Zhang Yujia tried to drag things out. Poplar Fruit shook his head firmly and said, "It's not early anymore. It's already past 9 o'clock. If we don't go to the hotel, it'll be troublesome if there are no rooms." Zhang Yujia hoped that the hotel would have no rooms so that Poplar Fruit would come back obediently. However, she knew that it was impossible. It wasn't the craziest holiday season yet. Even if it was, and even if it was during the most crowded National Day Golden Week, it was impossible to not find a room in a hotel in Beijing. Zhang Yujia's eyes turned. She moved her gaze away from Poplar Fruit to Kiki, who was reluctantly watching TV as her father put on his coat. "Poplar Fruit, let's give Kiki a bath before we go." Zhang Yujia looked at Poplar Fruit expectantly. "We can bathe in the hotel." Poplar Fruit squatted on the ground and answered without raising his head. But the hotel is unhygienic. Do you want your daughter to bathe in a bathtub that has been used by countless people? Zheng Yujie tried hard to find an excuse. Haven't you read this saying on the internet? The public bathrooms in the hotel have the most bacteria. The waitresses don't even clean them. They only change the bed sheets and clean up the trash in the room. That seemed to make a lot of sense. A line from Wang Dachui from Unexpectedly popped up in Yang's mind. What he said makes sense. I have nothing to say in response. Although Poplar Fruit hadn't reached this level, he also scratched his head and hesitated. He had heard that the hotel was indeed dirty. He wasn't afraid of anything, but Kiki was still young. Her skin was soft and tender. It was too easy for her to be attacked by bacteria. Moreover, her body's immune system wasn't perfect. Poplar Fruit couldn't be at ease. In fact, Poplar Fruit was fooled by Zheng Yujie. How could it be as terrible as she said? At most, it was a small hotel or an unlicensed private hotel that had such a problem. The management of big hotels had always been strict, and there was no need to complain about the hygiene. Otherwise, those celebrities who loved their wings wouldn't dare to stay in a hotel when they were flying around. Kiki suddenly opened her mouth and yawned. Her eyes were filled with tears because of the yawn. She looked tired and blurred. This was the last straw that broke the Poplar Fruit. By the time they arrived at the hotel, Chi-Chi would already be asleep. How could he wake her up to take a bath? Poplar Fruits. A poplar okay. It's poplar time. I'll bathe Kiki, Zheng Yujie said eagerly. You? Poplar Fruit scratched his head. Zheng Yujie pulled Kiki over, raised her head, and said, Yeah, why? You don't believe that I can bathe Kiki? Not really. Poplar Fruit knew that a girl's words must be more delicate than his. Bathing Kiki might even be cleaner than him. It was just that he didn't know what Zheng Yujie was up to. Zheng Yujie changed into a white shirt and carried Kiki into the bathroom. Not long after, Kiki's crisp screams and laughter came from the bathroom. The sleepiness seemed to have been swept away. Zheng Yujie was playing with her in the bathroom. The door wasn't closed. Their laughter poured into Poplar Fruit's ears. Poplar Fruit shook his head. He went back to the door and pulled out his suitcase. He rummaged through it to find the clothes that Kiki wanted to change into. Still a little worried, Poplar Fruit walked to the door and carefully looked inside. Fortunately, Zheng Yujie didn't act recklessly. She didn't take off her clothes to play with Kiki. Taking off her clothes to seduce Poplar Fruit was a little despicable. Zheng Yujie wouldn't go so far as to do that. Remember to support Kiki's head when you wash her hair. Poplar Fruit saw that Zheng Yujie was still a little clumsy, so he instructed her. In fact, compared to Poplar Fruit's clumsy appearance when he just became a father, Zheng Yujie was self-taught. Poplar Fruit even had to learn from the nurse at that time. Kiki laid on her back and called out crisply, Auntie. Zheng Yujie's hands were busy. She had to use a towel to wash off the foam on Kiki's hair. She responded perfunctorily. Auntie's hair, why doesn't it grow longer? Kiki looked and asked curiously. Kiki's hair is so pretty. On Kiki's first birthday, her hair was the same as Zheng Yujie's. It was only ear length. Later, Poplar Fruit wanted to let his daughter grow her hair long. Fong Beibei also supported Poplar Fruit's point of view, so she never cut it again. Now it was already shoulder length. She often shamelessly asked her father to carry her around in front of the mirror. She wanted to see more of the beautiful braids her father made for her. Because Annie likes short hair, Zheng Yujie laughed. Why? Dad said that girls with long hair are the prettiest, Kiki said innocently. Was this considered as revealing a secret? Zheng Yujie raised her head and looked deeply at Poplar Fruit. Her sparkling eyes seemed to be thinking of something. It's nothing. Yang was smiled awkwardly. After washing her hair, Zheng Yujie used a new towel to wipe Kiki's hair clean. Then, she put her into the warm bathtub. The water just reached Kiki's stomach. Where's the duckling? Kiki looked around, but she couldn't find the familiar rubber duckling in the bathtub. There's no duckling, but Annie will buy it for you next time, okay? Zheng Yujie quickly comforted. Kiki was a little disappointed. However, she quickly found a new pleasure, splashing water. Poplar Fruit had experienced this before. He was giving her a bath, but Kiki kept splashing water on him. She was having so much fun. Aya, Zhang Yujie was caught off guard. A few drops of water splashed on her body by Kiki's raised hand. Be careful. Poplar Fruit only remembered it this time. He quickly reminded her, but it was too late. Zhang Yujie's shouts made Chi-Chi even more energetic. She shouted and laughed as she scooped up water and splashed it out like she was having a water fight. What's more, Kiki waved her hands and slapped the water surface. Suddenly, countless waters splashed over the bathtub and flew outside, splashing on Zhang Yujie's clothes. Kiki, you made Annie's clothes wet. Zhang Yujie shouted reproachfully. Zhang Yujie's playfulness was stimulated by Kiki. As if she hadn't grown up, she started a water fight with Kiki. Their laughter echoed in the bathroom. Poplar Fruit originally wanted to stop them, but in the end, he had no choice but to hide to the side. In the end, the two finally stopped under Poplar Fruit's reminder. Zhang Yujie, who was worried that Kiki would catch a cold if she bathed for too long, finally finished bathing Kiki. Speaking of which, Xiaohan forgot to wish everyone a happy winter solstice. Did anyone eat dumplings or tangyuan yesterday? Xiaohan is a southerner, but he ate several delicious meat dumplings. I like it so much, haha. Chapter 408. Early in the morning, Yanghua was wiping the face of Chi-Chi, who had just woken up when there was a knock on the door. The thunderous knocking made Poplar Fruit frown. Who is it? Why does it sound so urgent? Why is the management of this hotel so bad? Poplar Fruit held the towel in his hand and walked out of the bedroom. He walked to the small living room and opened the door. He saw a woman and two men standing at the door. The most eye-catching one was the leading woman. She was a little old. Although she took good care of herself, the crow's feet at the corner of her eyes couldn't be removed just by taking good care of herself. She was dressed very luxuriously, and the Prada bag in her hand was definitely not cheap. After following Zhang Yujie to America, Poplar Fruit's knowledge of luxury brands had increased a lot. Are you in the wrong room? Poplar Fruit frowned and asked. Looking at the woman's angry face, it felt like the wife catching the mistress. Kiki didn't want to be left out. She walked in small steps and followed them from the bedroom. She stuck her head out from her father's leg and looked at the guests curiously. The leading woman's attention was involuntarily attracted by Chi-Chi. What a cute little girl. In order to wash Chi-Chi's face early in the morning, Yanghua even put on a headgear for her. Her bangs scattered, revealing Chi-Chi's delicate little face. The small face's facial features were compact, but exquisite and beautiful. Her smooth and tender skin also had a kind of white with a rosy luster, making people unable to help but want to hold her in their arms and gently nibble on her. Actually, Poplar Fruit was a little careless. He didn't see that the person who came looked like Zhang Yujie. That's right. The person who came was Zhang Yujie's mother, Deng Baoyan. Deng Baoyan couldn't sit still when she received news from her old classmate Peng Yu yesterday. However, she didn't rush over immediately because she wanted to talk to Poplar Fruit alone. According to Zhang Mingxing's analysis, Zhang Yujie's personality was too unyielding. If they directly forced Zhang Yujie to give up on the Poplar Fruit and accept their arrangement, it might even backfire. It would be better to put aside his daughter for now and take a roundabout way to start with Poplar Fruit. Deng Baoyan had looked up a lot of information about Poplar Fruit. It could be said that she had investigated every detail about Poplar Fruit. There wasn't much information in the past year, only what was mentioned in the reports. However, looking at the previous information, Deng Baoyan couldn't help but look down on Yanghua. She confidently made a plan to talk to Poplar Fruit alone. She felt that Poplar Fruit would back off. However, Deng Baoyan thought that she understood Poplar Fruit. In fact, did she really understand him? Let's not talk about this first. Deng Baoyan was very anxious today. Yesterday, she asked someone to check from the security guard of the community where Zhang Yujie stayed. After Zhang Yujie's car came back, she drove out again. Then, she checked for a night. This morning, she found out from the police that Zheng Yujia's car was parked in the parking lot of the hotel, and the person who checked in was Poplar Fruit's name. Deng Baoyan was furious. She understood that it was easy for young people to have sparks between them, but what was worse was that her daughter was involved in it. If they separated again, it would be very troublesome. Therefore, after she found out, Deng Baoyan rushed over anxiously. Poplar Fruit's attitude made Deng Baoyan unhappy. However, when she saw Kiki, Deng Baoyan's anger inexplicably disappeared. She liked this beautiful and cute little girl from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps it was because Deng Baoyan had reached the age where she longed to have grandchildren. Usually, when she saw her elder sister, who was the same age as her, bringing her grandchildren over from time to time, that innocent and cute look was very lovable. Poplar Fruit saw Deng Baoyan's happy look when she saw Kiki. He frowned and hid Kiki behind him. After Deng Baoyan couldn't see Kiki, she came back to her senses. She remembered that Kiki was the illegitimate daughter of this big boy in front of her who might have slept with her daughter. No matter how cute she was, it was useless if she wasn't of the Zheng family's blood. What a pity. At this time, Poplar Fruit noticed the two men in casual sportswear behind Deng Baoyan. These two men were brought over by Deng Baoyan from home. Although they had retired, they used to be old Master Zheng's bodyguards and were very skilled in martial arts. Don't think that bodyguards all wore suits. It was because of the restrictions of the occasion. Suits were actually more of a restraint to them. If they moved too much, it would tear the clothes. Therefore, these two men in sportswear were actually more threatening. After carefully sizing them up, Poplar Fruit's eyes narrowed and instantly lit up. He could see that the two men in front of him were very, very powerful. They were stronger than anyone Poplar Fruit had met before. Take Meng Sanhua, for example. Meng Sanhua probably wouldn't be able to resist one of them. Moreover, Poplar Fruit was looking at two of them at this moment. Kiki, go back to bed. Poplar Fruit's eyes were fixed on the two men as he ordered in a deep voice. Kiki had never seen her father so serious. She didn't know if it was because the father and daughter's hearts were connected, but Kiki seemed to feel danger. It was rare for her to obediently listen to her father's words. She turned her head and ran back to the bedroom at the back, only secretly sticking out her small head to watch. Regardless of whether there was a misunderstanding or not, Poplar Fruit didn't dare to let his guard down in the face of two strong enemies. He knew that because of Zheng Yujia, he had a very strong enemy in the capital, the son of an aristocratic family, Li Zichao. And Zheng Yujia's shrewish personality naturally made many enemies. Perhaps the three people in front of him were enemies who had come looking for him. Hearing Kiki's footsteps leaving, Poplar Fruit's aura began to rise. His serious face flashed with a cold gaze, and his hands that were once stained with blood emitted a faint murderous aura because he hadn't learned the aura concealment technique. The two former bodyguards that Deng Baoyan brought with her instantly felt it. Their expressions immediately changed, and they quickly blocked Deng Baoyan's left and right. Under their loose sports jackets, their muscles tightened. They also stared at Poplar Fruit as if they were facing a great enemy. Poplar Fruit thought that they were very strong, but they thought that Poplar Fruit was even stronger. The kind of light that could burst out from his eyes wasn't something that an ordinary martial artist could do. That was the patent of a martial artist with internal strength. As former bodyguards, they had a lot of experience. They definitely wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating Poplar Fruit just because he looked young. When they encountered a strong enemy, the two of them very tacitly protected Deng Baoyan first and formed a triangular formation. This kind of formation was more suitable for the two of them to cooperate. As long as the two of them attacked at the same time and cooperated with each other from a distance, the power of the combination wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Chapter 409. The two bodyguards were very powerful together, but if they really fought, it was hard to tell who would win and who would lose. Poplar Fruit's eyes had an eager light. He probably didn't realize that there was a kind of fanaticism in his bones. However, Deng Baoyan wouldn't have the chance to compete with them. Deng Baoyan didn't notice the two bodyguards' nervous look. She pushed the two bodyguards away and said, "What are you doing? When did it become your turn to fight? Am I that useless? Where's Yujia? Was she in there? Call her out for me." Deng Baoyan shouted. Deng Baoyan was born in a famous family and was used to being a high and mighty official's son. Even if she was over 50 years old, she still couldn't change the bad habit of ordering people around. However, she wasn't a bad person. She was usually very kind to people, but the character of looking down on ordinary people was deeply ingrained in her. She now looked down on poplar fruit, especially poplar fruit, who was born in the countryside. After she read the information, she felt particularly disgusted. Sometimes Deng Baoyan dreamed that Zheng Yude married poplar fruit and ended up in the countryside, wearing a tattered cotton-padded jacket. She looked very miserable with disheveled hair and a dirty face. At that time, she even woke up with tears flowing down her face. Poplar Fruit saw that Deng Baoyan had blocked the two biggest threats behind her, and he was slightly relieved. However, Deng Baoyan's shouting made him frown. She came to Zheng Yujia so aggressively. Could it be that she was really Zheng Yujia's enemy? Maybe this woman could be someone related to Li Zichao. Poplar Fruit blocked the door and looked at Deng Baoyan indifferently. He sneered and said, "Why should I tell you where she is?" Poplar Fruit's attitude made Deng Baoyan furious. She didn't think that Poplar Fruit would dare to talk to her like that. She felt that since Yang Guo had such a close relationship with her daughter, when she met her mother, she would at least have to be respectful, not to mention bowing her head and bending her waist. However, Poplar Fruit showed a contemptuous tone. "Do you still want to pursue my daughter?" Deng Baoyan was very unhappy. However, she had completely forgotten that Poplar Fruit still didn't know that she was Zheng Yujia's mother. Deng Baoyan gritted her teeth and scolded, "Get out of the way! Zheng Yujia, come out! Hey, can you stop arguing? This is a public place." Poplar Fruit frowned as he looked at the corridor on both sides. Deng Baoyan trembled with anger at Poplar Fruit's stubbornness. She reached out and tried to push Poplar Fruit away, but failed. She scolded angrily, "Bumpkin, get out of my way!" Poplar Fruit was very unhappy at this moment. Anyone who was scolded would be unhappy. He stood firmly at the door as if the soles of his feet were rooted to the ground. He retorted, "Auntie, do you have any manners? You knocked on my door early in the morning for no reason. You even tried to get physical with me. Do you still have any manners? If you don't have any manners, get out of the way. I'm going to close the door." Deng Baoyan was stunned by Poplar Fruit's words. Poplar Fruit's words echoed in her mind. "Do you still have any manners?" She muttered, "You actually dared to lecture me. You actually dared to lecture me." Poplar Fruit shook his head and took a step back. Just as he was about to close the door, Deng Baoyan stepped in front of the door. She shouted angrily, "Call Zheng Yujia out. If you don't even think about leaving today. Get out. Why should I listen to you? Why should I call her out just because you said so?" Poplar Fruit was enraged by this woman's rascal behavior, and he roared, "Why should I?" Deng Baoyan sneered and said word by word, "Because I'm her mother." Poplar Fruit was dumbfounded. This time, it was Poplar Fruit's turn to be stunned. Zheng Yujia's mother? Poplar Fruit only then noticed that although the middle-aged woman in front of him had thick makeup, from the outline of her face, she really did resemble Zheng Yujia. Although Poplar Fruit didn't have the fear of seeing Zheng Yujia's mother as if he saw his mother-in-law. After all, he hadn't thought in that direction. She was, after all, his friend's mother. Thinking back, his attitude toward her just now was really quite bad. Poplar Fruit scratched his head. He was in a dilemma. He didn't know how to apologize to Zheng Yujia's mother. The atmosphere was too awkward now. But now wasn't the time to be conflicted. She had already announced her identity. He couldn't just reject her, right? "Auntie." Hello, Annie. I'm sorry. Please come in." Poplar Fruit quickly stepped back and gave way to the door. His attitude had taken a 180-degree turn. From the initial dissatisfaction and disgust to the current respectful and apologetic smile. Deng Baoyan snorted and walked in. Poplar Fruit ran to the table in the living room first and pulled out a chair for Deng Baoyan. He smiled apologetically and said, "Auntie, please have a seat." Deng Baoyan ignored him and walked straight in. She brushed past Poplar Fruit's side and walked towards the bedroom. She was aggressive and unforgiving. The only change was that when she entered the bedroom, her eyes caught a glimpse of Kiki, who didn't even reach her knees. This cute little girl was timidly leaning against the door frame and looking at her. She was obviously a little frightened by her. Deng Baoyan's gaze softened a little. Her large strides also slowed down. She gently smiled at Kiki and walked past Kiki into the bedroom. Poplar Fruit rushed to his daughter's side before the two bodyguards could catch up. He vigilantly shielded his daughter behind him. This was the first time the two bodyguards had seen Poplar Fruit, so their reaction was a little overboard. But now they could guess that there was something going on between Poplar Fruit and the Zheng family's eldest granddaughter, so they weren't too worried about Deng Baoyan. When they saw Poplar Fruit's actions, they looked at each other and smiled. They didn't say anything, but the two of them didn't continue to follow. One of them stood in the living room with his hands hanging in front of his chest, while the other turned around and walked towards the door. The situation in the bedroom was completely different from what Deng Baoyan had imagined. There was no scene of chaos, and she didn't see her daughter's figure. The big bed in the middle of the bedroom was neatly folded, and the sun shone in, making it warm and cozy. The quilt was definitely not folded by Zheng Yujie. As a mother, how could Deng Baoyan not know Zheng Yujie's habits? Zheng Yujie had kicked the quilt around since she was young and didn't like to tidy it up. But where did Zheng Yujie go? She frowned and looked in the bathroom, but only saw Kiki's clothes that Poplar Fruit had washed yesterday hanging inside. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "Auntie, what are you looking for? Looking for Yujie? She's not here." Deng Baoyan was very unconvinced. She searched everywhere, under the bed, behind the curtains, and so on. As long as it was a place where someone could hide, she searched. Chapter 410. Deng Baoyan didn't give Poplar Fruit any face. Firstly, she wasn't satisfied with Poplar Fruit. Secondly, Poplar Fruit and her were at daggers drawn. Deng Baoyan was so angry that her impression of Poplar Fruit kept dropping. Deng Baoyan didn't even look at Poplar Fruit. She walked past Poplar Fruit and walked into the living room. She sat down on the chair that Poplar Fruit had just pulled out. The bodyguard in the living room stood behind her with his hands down, expressionless. After the other bodyguard closed the door, he stood behind it. The atmosphere was tense as they prepared to negotiate with the dark underworld society. Poplar Fruit saw this. He squatted down and gently pushed Kiki. He whispered to her, "Kiki, stay in the room and don't come out. Dad is talking to that grandma outside." Kiki nodded obediently. She kissed her dad's face and ran back to the bedroom. Poplar Fruit came in front of Deng Baoyan. Deng Baoyan slammed the table and asked sternly, "Where did she go? Don't tell me you don't know." "Auntie, don't be angry. Let's talk nicely." Poplar Fruit quickly comforted. "Talk nicely? Can't you talk nicely? You came to get a room in the middle of the night, and I can't find you. How can I talk nicely?" Deng Baoyan raised her eyebrows and argued. Poplar Fruit understood. Zheng Yujie's mother seemed to have misunderstood. He quickly explained, "Auntie, you misunderstood. The relationship between Yujie and I is not what you think. It's not what I think. What I think. You guys got a room. What else can I think?" Deng Baoyan opened her mouth and asked a long series of questions. "No, we didn't get a room." Poplar Fruit explained, "Yujie is staying at her house. We didn't mess around." "Auntie, you've really misunderstood. Then why is her car parked in the hotel?" Deng Baoyan asked in disbelief. "Yujie lent me her car last night and told me to use it while I'm in Beijing," Poplar Fruit explained. The situation did not seem to be as serious as she had imagined. Deng Baoyan's expression eased a little, but she was still a little skeptical. She glanced at Poplar Fruit and asked, "Is what you said true? You didn't come out together last night?" "There really isn't. I'm staying in this hotel with my daughter." Poplar Fruit sincerely explained. How could he not be sincere? Because he borrowed Zheng Yujie's car, it caused her mother to think that he had tarnished her daughter's innocence. No wonder she questioned him. This misunderstanding must be explained clearly. "I'm sorry, Annie. I didn't know it was you. I offended you with my words." Poplar Fruit carefully apologized, but before he could finish, he was interrupted by Deng Baoyan. Let's not talk about this first. Deng Baoyan's words were still very domineering. She waved her hand and interrupted Poplar Fruit's words. Then Deng Baoyan took out a checkbook from her bag and wrote a check. She tore it off and placed it on the table. Then she pushed it in front of Poplar Fruit with 2 fingers. Poplar Fruit did not understand and looked at Deng Baoyan in confusion. Here's 1 million. Leave her. Deng Baoyan coldly said. What? Poplar Fruit was surprised. Not satisfied, Deng Baoyan wrote another check and pushed it in front of Poplar Fruit. 2 million. Are you satisfied? Poplar Fruit's face suddenly changed. He frowned and asked, Auntie, what are you doing? Are you insulting my character with money? At this moment, Poplar Fruit's mind flashed with countless melodramatic scenes from movies, TV shows, and novels. Humph, you have a big appetite. Deng Baoyan threw the checkbook on the table. She wrote and sneered. Okay, I'll give you another 3 million. 5 million. Leave my daughter and get out of Beijing. Poplar Fruit pushed the new check and the previous 2 back to Deng Baoyan. He shook his head and said, Auntie, no matter how much money you give me, I won't agree. Deng Baoyan sneered at Poplar Fruit. She said, I believe that everything has a price. Tell me, how much money do you want to leave her? This is not a matter of money. Poplar Fruit frowned. Haha, it seems that you're scheming something big. Deng Baoyan sneered. Unfortunately, you picked the wrong person. Let me tell you clearly, our Zheng family is not something you can climb up to. Logically speaking, Yanghua should try his best to explain that there was nothing going on between him and Zheng Yujie. But at this moment, Yanghua got a little carried away. He was provoked by Deng Baoyan's words, and he said, unhappily, your Zheng family is very powerful, but why would I want to climb up your social ladder? Do I care about your little bit of power? Do I care about your little bit of money? Poplar Fruit was even more disgusted when he thought of Deng Baoyan's words about him being a country bumpkin. He said, don't always talk about money. Is money omnipotent? Although I came from a countryside, I won't die for money. Because money can't exchange for happiness. It can't exchange for happiness. Can you give my daughter happiness if you don't have money? Deng Baoyan snorted at Poplar Fruit's words. She laughed and said, you're too naive. In the end, aren't you still after Yujie's money? Don't think that I don't know that you have books to translate and money to earn. These opportunities are all fought for by Yujie. Otherwise, aren't you still a poor translator? Poplar Fruit was immediately annoyed when he was questioned about his professionalism. He didn't have time to explain that he wasn't Zheng Yujie's man and that he didn't need to give Zheng Yujie happiness. He quarreled with Deng Baoyan first. Poplar Fruit wanted to make it clear that he didn't rely on Zheng Yujie's books to make money. Yanghua counted with his fingers as he counted with Deng Baoyan. In the end, he concluded, the money I earn from the translation company is more than 10 times the money I earn from translating those books. To be honest, translating those books takes a lot of time and effort. If it wasn't because I'm interested, why would I need to translate those books for the publishing company? Deng Baoyan nodded her head and said, the money I earn from the translation company is more than 10 times the money I earn from translating those books. I admit that Yujie did help me a lot when I worked with the publishing company, but please don't doubt my ability. The books I translated can sell well because of my hard work. Poplar Fruit said seriously. Do you think you've earned enough money? Deng Baoyan sneered. Poplar Fruit had just said a lot of words, but it was all in vain. She didn't care about how good Poplar Fruit's translation skills were. I didn't earn much, but it's enough for us to live. Poplar Fruit said sincerely. The us he was referring to was him and Kiki, but it was obvious that Deng Baoyan misunderstood him. Deng Baoyan sneered and said, that's ridiculous. This little money is enough. Do you know how much Yujie spends every month? Tonight is Christmas Eve. On behalf of little Kiki, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas in advance. Those who have boyfriends and girlfriends must be happy tonight. Haha, looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Greater than over equal to that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and Don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.